Take two. Good evening. I'd like to call the Select Board meeting for Monday, March 31st, 2025 to order. And note that we will be going into executive session and returning no sooner than 6 p.m. Can I get a motion, Mr. Howell?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I move that we go into executive session as follows. A, executive session pursuant to the provisions of General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss potential litigation by the town if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect to the bargaining or litigating position of the public body, and the chair so declares. Christopher Wise versus Harwich Planning Board, Barnstable Superior Court, CA number 2172 CV 00239. And B, pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining for all town unions and non-union personnel, and/or contract negotiations with non-union personnel, and the chair has determined that open session would have a detrimental effect on the town's bargaining position.
Thank you, Don. We have a motion. We have a second. Moved and seconded. All in favor, Don?
Aye.
Julie?
Aye.
And I'm an aye, 3-0. Well, good evening, and I would like to call back to order the Select Board meeting for Monday, March 31st, 2025. Back to order. We started in executive session, and no decisions, no actions, no decisions were made. If you would all like to join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Just a quick announcement, Michael McCaskill, Select Board Member McCaskill, is online, and we're also joined by Ed Spellman, our Interim Finance Director. So thank you for being here tonight, Ed. Really appreciate you taking the time for us tonight. So thank you. No problem. Let's start with staff comments and announcements. Any staff?
Good evening, everyone. Ashley Symington, Director of Youth and Family Services. Just wanted to let you know about a few programs that are getting ready to start up soon. One is scheduled to start tomorrow. It's a program called Moving On Up. It is for 7th graders going into 8th grade next year, and it is geared to support them in that transition. So it is for students who are currently attending Monomoy Middle School, and it's a 7-week group. Working on feeling anxious about it, or students who have ADHD and may need just a little bit of assistance with that transition. There will be an optional 1 week follow-up the week prior to school starting as well. So we'll catch them for 7 weeks now, and then catch them again right before school starts, make sure they're good to go. This month's Understanding Mental Health is taking place at the Community Center on Thursday, April 17th. This month we're going to be talking about understanding grief. Our Raise 'em Up this month topic, which is our Caring for Children and Teens workshop series, is let's talk about the importance of play for all ages. And then I have 2 new programs that are getting ready to start. Last fall, I had 2 families approach with a question of if there could be a program for young adults with high-functioning autism. There is currently, and has been for a long time, a gap in services for folks who are not quite at the level where they're able to independently function, but they don't quite qualify for supports that are currently available. So we're starting a social skills club in May. It will meet for 8 weeks for young adults ages 19 to 24. Different activity each week, supporting social skill development and continued development, as well as being in varied locations for each of those 8 weeks, helping them to be able to practice those social skills in different locations and in different situations, as well as just helping them realize that they do belong here, and we've got lots of different places that they can spend their time. And then last program I've got to announce is actually a program that is set to take off in July. It will be Tuesday, July 15th from 4 to 6 p.m. We are going to have our first annual Connect and Grow Storytelling Festival. This oral storytelling event will be showcasing tales that celebrate our connection with nature, as well as promoting environmental wellness. So I am currently looking for storytellers who are interested in a 10-minute slot for a story, again, related to connecting with nature or environmental wellness. It needs to be a story that's appropriate for all ages. And folks can reach out to me with questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other staff?
Thank you for the opportunity. Carolyn Carey, Community Center Director. Just going through the April events. The Guess and Win the Jelly Bean contest is up and for all ages. On April 3rd is another free pasta dinner at the community center at 5:30. During the pasta dinner, we're having a Narnia fashion show, also free. The do-it-yourself egg hunt kits are available for sign-up, so you just call and sign up. We'll have those ready for you to go. They will be picked up on April 11th from 9 to 7. Also on April 11th, the bunny is stopping by, so bring your cameras and have some photos with the bunny. On April 18th, it is the adult prom night, not to be missed. I'm hoping to see a lot of you coming over for that. Then we're going into the April vacation, and we are doing our step-a-thon. It was very popular last year. So you pick up a packet, you keep track, prizes are won. First 25 people get a bag to start us off. Then we'll be doing a seed starting party. At least I'm gonna try. I can't really grow anything, so kind of scared if anyone wants to help out with that one. There'll be a book talk on April 25th. And then also, I am just announcing that The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe is starting at the Junior Theater on April 4th. So I think that's everything, and thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much. Any other staff? Okay, hearing none. Let's go to the weekly briefing. Joe, if you wouldn't mind.
Certainly. Thank you,
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman. Good evening, everybody. This is the weekly briefing, again, for the Phase 3 sewer construction extension for East Harwich, specifically Project 2 West. Presently, Robert B. Hour is maintaining work in and around Martha Eaton Court, and that road is, right now, remains closed to through traffic. They are still working as well on Standish Wood Circle, same situation where they are still closed to through traffic. And then looking ahead, they expect to continue that work and progress on Route 39 to start Project 1E. And that would be from Fire Station to Church Street. And that looks like that's going to be the next look-in from March 31st through April 11th. So beginning next week's briefing, perhaps we'll be talking about 2 West and 1 East. And that concludes my briefing.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Anyone for public comment? Please.
Good evening, Matt Sutphin, Harwich. I'm here to suggest that this board delete one of the agenda items tonight, namely the collection of $10,000 from somebody who wants to use the Walther Road property effectively as his private beach. I think it's inappropriate, given that the CONSCOM has not as yet given the green light for you all to prejudice their deliberations. It's kind of like a squeeze play, and just it doesn't seem right. We've had these squeeze plays in Harwich before. We've had people buy ambulances, hire people to work for the town. It just has a bad look, and I'd ask you to think about deleting the 10,000 gift until the Conservation Commission makes a decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment?
Thank you. Jim, please. Go for it. No, I've been speaking here a lot. Go for it.
Good evening. My name is Ryan Edwards. I am a resident with 3 young children. I'm speaking in regards to my extreme disappointment with the decision by the school district administrators to cut the integrated preschool program in Harwich from 4 sessions to 3 sessions. On December 6th, Melissa McGuire sent an email to select Monomoy preschool families stating, "Dear Monomoy preschool families, I hope this letter finds you well. I'm writing to let you know that there will be some changes to our preschool program for the 2025-2026 school year. After careful review of the number of preschool children attending our program, available resources and space, in determining how we can best serve our preschool children, we will be moving all our preschool classrooms to Chatham Elementary School next year. Dr. Jennifer Kelly is the principal at Chatham Elementary School. The letter continued on, but I will not read the rest tonight. The decision to move the integrated preschool from the Harwich Elementary School to the Chatham Elementary School was apparently never discussed or approved by the Monomoy Regional School Committee, so a FY26 preschool configuration recommendation was placed on the agenda for the December 12th school committee meeting. A number of Harwich families showed up to the December 12th school committee meeting in opposition to the announced change to the integrated preschool program, including parents who spoke against the change during public comment. During the FY26 preschool configuration recommendation presentation, Melissa McGuire offered a number of scenarios, including a move all pre-K to CES scenario with 4 sessions and a total of 14 SWD students, as well as a move all preschool to HES scenario with 4 sessions and a total of 13 SWD students. The school committee pointed out to Melissa McGuire that there were inconsistencies between the number of preschool students.
Ryan, if you don't mind, just clarify SWD for the public.
Students with disabilities.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Just so the public understands what you're
Thank you.
referencing.
The school committee pointed out to Melissa McGuire that there were inconsistencies between the number of preschool students in the different scenarios in the presentation, which led the school committee to not make any recommendations during that meeting. A FY26 revised preschool recommendation agenda item was placed on the agenda for the January 9th school committee meeting. A number of Harwich families again showed up to the January 9th school committee meeting to oppose any changes to the integrated preschool program in Harwich. During that January 9th meeting, Melissa McGuire presented the FY26 revised preschool recommendation, which recommended to the school committee that the integrated preschool program remain in Harwich, but this time the program would only include 3 sessions and a total of 13 SWD students instead of the 4 sessions in both the Move All Pre-K to CES and Move All Preschool to HES scenarios that were presented at the December 12th school committee meeting. Also during the revised preschool recommendation presentation, Melissa McGuire showed a slide with the historical trends of the integrated preschool program with more than a decade worth of data. The average number of SWD students in Melissa McGuire's historical trend slide came out to roughly 28 SWD students per year in the integrated preschool program. The integrated preschool classroom assignment recommendation by Melissa McGuire for the 2025-2026 school year only leaves slots for 21 SWD students. After Melissa McGuire spoke on the FY26 revised preschool recommendation, a new preschool program in Chatham was proposed for the first time by administration, with the funding for this program included in the draft budget. After the new preschool program in Chatham was discussed, one of the school committee members asked, depending if it went the other way, would there have been a classroom freeing up in Harwich? If we moved it to Chatham, which was the initial proposal, then I think there's a classroom or whatever in Harwich. So that's where I was going. Why didn't this come up before? Superintendent Carpenter replied, I'm concerned about how tight space can be at Harwich Elementary, and we also have a community partner in the Y over there that I would love to see the Y continue to expand and accommodate more and more families. It is serving a purpose, so we're able to use free classroom space over at Harwich Elementary School for the greater good. It's just the conversation at the table freed up a preschool classroom space at Chatham Elementary, so the brainstorming began. Okay, now how can we use that for the greater good? I stood up before the district administrators and the school committee and asked them to keep the 4 sessions for the integrated preschool program in Harwich in the budget as a placeholder. I sent the school committee a letter making that same request. I've pointed out that there were the same number of 13 SWD students in the December 12th Move All Preschool to HES scenario as there were in the January 9th revised preschool recommendation, but the program was cut from 4 sessions to 3 sessions. I also pointed out that the integrated preschool classroom assignment recommendation by Melissa McGuire for the 2025-2026 school year only leaves slots for 21 SWD students, which is 7 less than the historical average of 28 SWD students.
Hey, Ryan?
Yes.
We do try to limit this to 3 to 4 minutes, so if you
Okay.
just see if you can condense it just a bit.
Sure.
Thank you.
All right. I asked for an explanation as to why the number of preschool sessions changed in the classroom assignment recommendation from the December 12th preschool presentation to the January 9th preschool presentation, when the number of SWD students anticipated was similar. I did get a response back, but it didn't necessarily answer my question completely. They didn't give specific numbers. Since the response to some of my questions from the district administrators on February 13th, a preschool open house took place on March 12th and a preschool screening on March 19th. I do not believe that there has been an update with the projected number of SWD students in the integrated preschool program since the January 9th school committee meeting. They continued on with the budget process with only 3 sessions for the integrated preschool program in Harwich, while keeping the brand-new preschool program opportunity in Chatham as a placeholder in the budget, without providing many details on what that program would actually look like. With very little data provided to the Harwich families to justify the administration's decision to cut the integrated preschool program from 4 sessions to 3 sessions, it has left many Harwich families very frustrated with only assumptions as to why the integrated preschool program is being cut to 3 sessions. One of the assumptions that I've heard from Harwich families is that administration is purposefully reducing the number of peer student slots in the integrated preschool program in order to get families to enroll their children in the brand-new preschool program in Chatham. There is also the assumption that administration was originally trying to move the integrated preschool program to the Chatham Elementary School in order for the YMCA to have more preschool classrooms at the Harwich Elementary School. A final assumption that I have heard from Harwich families is that Melissa McGuire is cutting the sessions in the integrated preschool program as retaliation for parents speaking out against her announced plan to move the integrated preschool program to Chatham. I believe that all of these assumptions could be cleared up with open communication regarding the integrated preschool program, but that is yet to happen. I'm asking the Select Board to vote to approve the revised Harwich assessment for the Monomoy Regional School District budget that was voted on by the school committee on Thursday, March 27th, except that we add funding for 0.5 FTE teacher positions to the Harwich assessment to restore the integrated preschool budget back to 4 sessions. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your time, Ryan.
Sorry I ran a little long.
No,
I
that's quite all right.
apologize.
That's all right. We do have a little latitude. Anybody else for public comment?
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm Ann Frechette, East Harwich Great Sand Lakes Association. I want to start by thanking the Select Board for placing the Great Sand Lakes Sewer Extension warrant article on the 2025 town meeting warrant. I'm here today to ask that the Select Board vote to support the article and not continue with indefinite postponement. My understanding of your argument not to move forward is that you believe you do not have enough information to support the article. I've heard that argument repeatedly, and I'd like to see more effort to seek answers to the outstanding questions that you have. You can do better. Last week, you discussed bringing Andrew Gottlieb from APCC to a Select Board meeting to explain how the state revolving fund works and to respond to outstanding questions. You could also call, I'm slowly not finding my notes. Okay, you could also call Robin McNamara, who administers the state revolving fund. I've spoken with her, and people from my neighborhood have spoken with her repeatedly. And every time we have this conversation, she confirms that the project is eligible for 0% financing, that it's eligible for 3.3% principal forgiveness because Harwich is in Tier 1, and that similar projects have received 25% principal forgiveness from the Cape and Island Water Protection Fund, and that only projects approved for SRF funding can receive those funds. So I want to emphasize here that there's not an open competition for those funds from the Cape and Island Water Protection Fund, that you actually have to already successfully have received SRF funding. So that puts us in a great position. I want to address as well the argument that certain select board members have made repeatedly that there's no connection between our pond water and the drinking water. And I have forwarded to the select board information that I received from the Cape Cod Commission to demonstrate the connection. And there are great figures. So I did not have time to submit the information for the packet, but I encourage everyone to look at the Pond and Lake Atlas, and particularly page 28, figure 1, which shows very clearly how the water in our ponds connects to the drinking water. So I hope that as we continue this conversation, we can at least start from that position and not backtrack. Finally, I want to address the discussion that started at last week's select board meeting initiated by Martha Donovan, who I have to say up front I respect enormously, and I appreciate that she spoke and was involved with this project. I'm concerned, however, that her comments may be taken out of context. So as we all who were here remember, she provided a very, very lengthy preface to her comments to emphasize that everything she was saying was pure speculation based on no research whatsoever. So I just want to put it out here now that I'm worried that other people speaking in opposition to the sewer project, who do not share Martha's sense of responsibility or ethics, may say at town meeting or elsewhere, Martha Donovan, chair of the Capital Outlay Committee, proposed a less expensive alternative. And I want to point it out here that that is not what she did. There was no proposal, no research whatsoever, as she herself pointed out, just pure speculation. I want to emphasize that we are at risk of losing a $31 million finance package. The deadline is June 30th, 2025. I think the days of pure speculation ought to be over, and we ought to be dealing with authoritative information. So I encourage the select board to behave in a responsible manner to seek authoritative answers to any outstanding questions. I look forward to further discussions, and I look forward to your vote to support the Great Sand Lake Sewer Extension warrant article. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Ann. Anybody else for public comment? Hearing none, let's move to the consent agenda.
Can we split that up?
Absolutely.
absolutely,
We'll do A first.
So, Mr. Chair, I move to approve the Select Board meeting minutes from March 17, 2025 as printed.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll roll call because Michael McCaskill is online. All in favor? Pete?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
Julie?
Abstain.
Michael?
Aye.
I'm an aye. 4-0-1. And then item B.
For the purpose of discussion, Mr.
Yes.
Chair, I move that we accept a gift in the amount of $10,000 from Timothy Ritchie for the purpose of rebuilding the stairs to access Jenkins Beach on Walter Road.
Moved. Do I have a second?
I'll second for discussion.
Thank you, Mr. McCaskill. Let me just read the letter that's in our packet, and then we can have our discussion. Dated 3/19/25. To Harwich Town Select Board. My wife and I are pleased to donate $10,000 to the town, to the Town Select Board to use in rebuilding the stairs to enable access to Jenkins Beach on Walther Road. Sincerely, Tim Ritchie. Any discussion? Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Even before Matt got up to speak, I was going to say exactly the same thing that he did. We decided that we were going to follow a matter of process, for this. Kick it back to the regulatory body for them to examine, the issues that have to do with the environment, which this has some impact on. It is extremely precipitous to take a gift to build something that we don't even know has been approved or will be approved, for that matter. So while I would be happy to accept the money, if there is an approval of some sort down the road, I think it's premature, and I wouldn't support it tonight.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I would agree with that. I mean, we did push it back, not push it, but refer it back to conservation where it belongs, so I'd wait to see how they move.
Michael?
I have no problem accepting the gift. Clearly, we can't use it if if the project doesn't move forward. But I would like to thank them for the gift, depending on how the board votes tonight. Regardless, it was a very generous gift, and again, no problem accepting the gift, given the fact that if we don't rebuild the stairs or can't do the regulatory board's decision, we don't have to spend the money and we can give it back.
Pete?
So, I guess similar to some of my other colleagues, and all due respect to Mr. Sutphen, I don't quite understand the squeeze play mentality, but I do consider it the cart before the horse mentality. And so, as much as I appreciate the Ritchie's offer, and I hope that it continues to be there, should this project be allowed, I think we should hold off only because of the again, the process piece. I don't want to see the town having to send the Ritchies the $10,000 check back. So, again, I appreciate their offer, and I think it's very generous, but I'd rather just see the process play out logistically.
So I'll just add that I hear all four of you. There is, as I spoke to Conservation, there is a process, and the process would be there needs to be engineering, site plan review. There needs to be money spent before it gets to Concom. So I'm not sure we would want the town of Harwich to front the bill to do the engineering, do all the necessary work that anybody would have to do prior to going to Conservation. I can tell you, it's not cheap. Only to find out then the project's not going to move forward, then the town's out the money. Mr. Ritchie and his wife have donated this nice gift to begin the process. And I don't know if it changes the mind of the board, that if we're,
No, go ahead.
yeah, if we're going to move forward with this process, there's going to need to be money spent prior to going to Concom. So I'll leave it at that, and
Well, the only reason I'm following up on that is, again, I appreciate the gift, it's very generous. And the only reason I wouldn't look to accept it yet is until we heard Conservation. But if we're gonna talk about what needs to be spent in order to get to Conservation and get something in front of them, then I would just want reassurance that the Ritchies understood, then we're talking about a site plan, not stairs.
fair enough. Anybody else? Don?
Notwithstanding the fact that I wouldn't vote for it tonight, Michael's right. Either way that we do this, we should send him a letter of gratitude for making the offer.
Definitely.
Any other board members?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Michael.
No, it wasn't Michael, it was Richard
Oh,
Waystack.
I'm sorry, Richard. You and Michael look a lot alike. I'm so sorry. Oh, there you are.
My brother from another mother, okay. I just want to say, during the discussion of the stairs before the select board, I know there were a couple of questions of, how are you going to finance this if you do it? The town has always financed beach stairs in the past when we've lost stairs at Gray Neck Road Beach. But I think that was, the intent of the Ritchies, because that question did came up from your select board of, if you were going to approve these stairs, how you were going to fund it. So I believe that's the spirit of their donation. And, if you either table it or you hold this till it does go through the process, I think the Ritchies would still be willing to make that donation. You had a previous speaker who made a very crass comment about a private beach for a neighbor from someone who doesn't live in the neighborhood. So I think, these folks stepped up, they listened to what you said at a previous meeting, and they wanted to begin the ball game of raising some funds. So that was the spirit of their offer. If you do hold it off, that's fine. I'm sure they'll still be there when and if it gets approved by the CONSCOM. Thank you.
Anybody else?
My only comment, based on your comments, Mr. Chair, is that I read this letter, and I still read it. It's for the rebuilding of the stairs. I'm happy to see if the Ritchies' intent is to just contribute in a general sense, and in which case I'd be happy to accept those funds. But again, I just read it as it's for the stairs themselves.
Thank you for that, Pete. If it's okay with the board, I would like to do a little more work. I will contact the Ritchies and let them know what has transpired here tonight, what our discussion is. I will go to Concom, and make sure that that's actually the process, which I believe it is. And then I'll bring it back next Monday or the following Monday, and we can have another discussion about the funds.
Yeah.
Does that sound okay with the board?
I'd like to-
Assuming you take the motion off the
Yeah,
table.
I'd like to withdraw my motion.
Who seconded that? Michael?
I will remove my second.
Thank you. Motion's off the table. Excellent. Just make a quick note here. All right. 2025 Annual Town Meeting. We now will start with the Monomoy Regional School discussion on fiscal year 2026 budget. Please. Joe, before they begin, I'm going to ask the updated is not in this packet tonight. Is that correct?
The updated,
The updated budget, the revised budget, or is this?
This one is-
Okay, no, I do see it. Okay, thank you. Excellent. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Floor is yours.
Good evening, Select Board. I'm Mike McMillan. I'm the School Business Manager for Monomoy Regional School District. And we presented to you last week and went away, and since then, there was a meeting of the Regional District School Committee. Prior to that, the Regional District's Finance Subcommittee to review the request from the Select Board that we review the budget. And the Finance Committee and then subsequently the Select Board, subsequently the School Committee approved a revision to the budget, and that's what's presented here this evening. So that revision is a new budget figure of $49,241,572. So that is an increase of 5.87% from the FY25 budget, and that is 0.86% lower than the previous budget increase that we presented to you. And that's a total reduction of $400,418 on the previous draft of the budget. So obviously how that plays out in terms of the assessments is a reduction, so the new Harwich assessment is a 4.23% increase from FY25's budget. That is slightly over 1% lower than the previous budget we presented to you. And a slightly smaller decrease in Chatham's assessment, and that comes down to where, as I'm going to show you in a moment, where the reductions that we made in the budget were. So this breaks the new budget total down by, not the new budget, but the new assessment down by the assessment categories. They're defined within the regional agreement. That's operating assessment, capital, transportation and debt. The operating assessment increase for Harwich is 5.7%. Meanwhile, capital is down. Capital, it's a relatively small number, 323,000. Not small in real numbers, but small in terms of the percentage impact it has. And that's why, small fluctuations there. It's just to do with timing of projects. We're focused on the middle school project at the moment. We had a couple of projects in Harwich Elementary School this year, and so that's impacted that capital assessment. Transportation assessment is down slightly. That's actually due to just an increase in available funds in state reimbursement for transportation costs, and debt, and that again comes back because we reissued the high school debt, and that reduced our annual costs on that debt. So that's what nets out at that 4.23% increase. So I won't go through all of these, but these are the items that we removed from the budget in order to get to this revised budget total. So these are the items that make up that $400,418. I think there's a number of different things we had in preparing the budget. The district leadership team had identified a number of priority items. So essentially, all of those items that were not staffing related were removed from the budget. So you see a lot of their professional development, furniture, and some software in order to get us to that $400,000 amount. All right. So that's kind of the overview, and then we're going to get into some specifics related to other questions.
So
Thank
one
you.
of the,
Please.
I don't know if
No,
you
no,
have a
go
question.
ahead, please.
So, one of the things that we have oftentimes started presentations of the budget the last couple seasons is talking about decreasing enrollment but increasing need. And, one of the things after you spoke at Thursday at the school committee meeting, I was just doing a little comparison of 2011, sort of just before we came together as a region, and today, and looking at the elementary schools, because if you think about 2011, the folks that are in preschool were in early preschool back then are our seniors, and just how much have things changed in that window of time. And then if you look at the elementary schools, you can kind of project forward, just the direction of the district is going. So this slide really shows the two elementary schools and where they were in 2011, where they were today, and they sort of forecast sort of changing trends that our towns are having. So clearly the enrollment is down at both elementary schools. Harwich is down by a little over 20%. Chatham Elementary's almost declined by nearly half in that stretch of time. What's heading the opposite direction is we see our students that come from families and homes that speak English, another language besides English, greatly increasing at both schools. Harwich Elementary, for its size, surprisingly has 15 different home languages that are spoken at Harwich Elementary today. The other thing that's radically changed in the time between 2011 and today is the number of families that are experiencing economic challenges, which I know it gets back to the whole housing crisis and everything else that we're seeing. But if we looked at the number of students that qualified as low income back in 2011, both of our towns were right around 18%. Today, that number's closer to 40% for our two towns. And the state now carries a number that it didn't carry back in 2011, just high needs. Just what percent of your students are either have English language learning challenges, they come from families that are impoverished, or they have special education needs. And both of our elementary schools are right up at that 50% range, that half of our children have some pretty significant needs that the school district is having to backfill and support. So again, we're seeing that increasing need, increase while our numbers have been decreasing.
Before you flip the page, can I ask you a quick question on that, if you don't mind? Your high needs at Harwich at 49.9, is that an aggregate of students with disabilities, low income, first language not? Is that all?
It's not adding all of those. It's so that there are some children could have low income and be on special education plans. So it's what percentage of your population have at least one of those three or more.
Understood.
And then just to attempt to clarify preschool, what preschool is, what preschool isn't. And I know that last time we were here, I think some people, I think even on the board, might have mentioned the term universal preschool. Mm-hmm. So to kind of, preschool for me brings things almost full circle. My very first budget presentation at the Chatham Select Board, Chairman Dykins asked, he was like, Scott, if you had to do anything to this new school district, what would you do? And I said, if there was a way that we could get to a place that was universal preschool, where the towns are actually paying for preschool for every child, I think that would be a great thing. And I think he was probably surprised, because here I'm coming from a high school background, but I also know the research in terms of what early preschool experiences, quality experiences are for young children, and how that pays off down the road in terms of having them better kindergarten ready, and then better ready for learning all the way down through senior year. So So the preschool that we offer at Harwich Elementary School isn't universal preschool. It's an integrated preschool. It's an integrated preschool model. I'm glad that both of our towns in the last 12 years have adopted the vouchers for families to access different sorts of childcare and preschool opportunities for their children. So the Monomoy Integrated Preschool at Harwich Elementary School doesn't accept those vouchers. So we don't go and take a town voucher. It's not taking money out of one pocket, moving it to another. So this is a half-day program. It runs 4 days a week, so it's a Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday program running the school year long. The key thing in terms of how many students are in the preschool and how many sections you need is it's driven by the students with disabilities. So we currently, as of I think it's as of last Wednesday when I was starting to put these numbers together, we currently have identified 13 students for next year for the integrated preschool. The preschool classes can have up to 7 students with disabilities in them, and we're mandated by the state to have the peers, the number of peers, be essentially a 1-to-1 ratio. So the state directive is that it's supposed to be at 49-51%. So at most, you could have 7 students with special needs in a classroom, and you could have that plus 1. So 8 students that are the peers with them. So because the class size maximum that you have is 15. So again, with 13 students identified, one could say, well, you could just have 2 sections, because 13 divided by 2, you could be less than. But we're also at the end of March. We know that we're going to see some additional students get identified through the early intervention process. So we're going to see that number grow. We also don't expect that it's going to grow up into the mid to high 20s. Based on what we see out there right now, odds are we should see that number settle in probably less than 21, which was why we made the decision. Again, it's if the enrollment's decreasing, sharpen your pencils, and where can you reduce your staffing. So we decided in the budget iteration process to go and reduce it down to 3 sections. The challenge, as Mr. Edwards brings up, is if you have less students with special needs, then you have less peer slots. I mean, it all comes down to it's the number of peer slots you have is not driven by the number of sections you offer. It's driven by the number of students with special needs that you have. So with 13 students with special needs at the moment, there are really only openings for 13-ish students that would be peers, as opposed to the current year. Currently we have 25 students that have special needs, so there's space for a little over 25 peer slots. So it's the students who have disabilities that drive the number of sections and drives the number of peer openings. There was a bump up in the preschool enrollments that happened after COVID. During COVID, there were a lot of children that weren't getting into like their physicians as much as they would. So there were students who just weren't identified during COVID for early intervention. And we saw a bumper crop of students needing early intervention come out of COVID. So I think what we've seen the last couple of years is the high number, that wave coming out of COVID has kind of hit us, and now we're seeing, we're sort of caught up with the backlog. So that kind of gets us to integrated preschool, and I'll stop there and just answer questions about the integrated preschool before moving on and talking about the 2 other early childhood programs.
So thank you for that. And the next agenda item is number 2, Harwich Integrated Preschool for fiscal year 2026. So I would prefer to just hold off on questions specific to that item and continue along with the budget as our topic for this agenda item.
Jump to the YMCA.
Unless there's something you want to tie to the budget.
We can come back.
Okay.
One budget-related question?
I'm sorry?
Can I ask?
Oh, yeah, of course, sure.
So just because Mr. Edwards mentioned it, the question about putting the .20 back in, what would that? Sorry, 0.5, excuse me. What would that do?
That would be in, so, because we include some assumption around health insurance and a half person would be entitled to health insurance, it's around $61,570 is the assumption we carry for half FTE.
Thank you.
And, you know, to kind of loop back, it also doesn't increase the number of peer slots. It just, since it's the number of students with disabilities that dictate how many peers there are, so that you have that 1-to-1 ratio.
I have integrated pre-K questions, but I'll wait till we go to
Yeah,
that subject.
hold on to that if you don't
We
mind.
have sort of 3 slides on different preschools.
Great.
Just to be clear, even
Any
if
other, I'm sorry.
So I was just going to add, if we added, you know, we can't actually just add a half FTE. There might be instructional assistants required if
Yeah.
there was more students.
Right,
so you don't
it's
add it.
complicated, I get it, yep, thank you.
Any more you want to add on the budget itself before I turn it over to the board for questions?
It's just the point of the YMCA.
Well,
Saying
I
that
think we can get to that.
assessment.
Okay. I'll go to the board. Does anybody want to open with a question?
Mr. Chair, I really don't have any questions. Unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to review it today. I know it was sent to us by email today. I didn't have a chance to review it, but I think I don't really need to review it. Again, I'm not here to write your budget or to set your budget. I appreciate you folks, you know, school administration and the school committee for taking the time to go through this exercise. You know, I've talked about it ad nauseum. This was an effort that I feel allows the town of Harwich to present a solid budget to town meeting. There's clearly things that I know you folks and your administrative teams wish they could have within their budget, but it doesn't appear that it devastates your school district by any stretch of the imagination. So, again, I appreciate the exercise. And the only thing I'll say, and I'm speaking individually, not as a board member, you know, when it comes to Harwich Elementary School, it looks like there's a couple items in there, and I know it's too late for this town meeting, but it looks like there's a few items in there that we could potentially entertain as free cash items. You know, they're one-offs. You know, I forget exactly what a couple of them were. Not exactly sure what the Riser project is, but furniture, correct, things like that, that perhaps in the future, and again, I know there was conversation about communication back and forth for a greater period of time than just budget season. And perhaps some of those are the little things we can tick off without having to put into your budget and, again, help keep that number suppressed a little bit and helps everybody. So, just a thought.
Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I echo everything Pete said, and oddly, I'm not going to have any criticism about the presentation, but this is a constant source of annoyance to me. I know things can't change temporally at times because you get information and you want us to have them, but we got to get into the habit that if something comes in, more than an email is necessary because the public doesn't know what the hell we're talking about. So we get stuff like this. I expect it to go into a packet for the meeting it was relative to, so anybody who wants to, from the public, peruse, look it over, that they have that opportunity, because we keep forgetting no one has access to our email addresses.
Are you referring to the budget?
Just in general, yep.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, it's nothing irreparable, but we do this a lot. I mean, and there are emails that go out like a Monday afternoon, and the public, if it's a public meeting and it's an agenda item, I'd really love whatever backup material that we get to look at, that the public also gets to look at.
So just as just
Just
for
as a standard.
clarification, right?
Yeah.
This email got to us on Friday at 4:30 after business hours.
Doesn't matter. It's,
Okay.
it didn't get to the public.
It did not, and I agree with you on that. It did not get to the public.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, please.
I believe there was an updated packet that was published today.
And that's great. That's what I'm pushing for in general. It's not about this specifically.
Right. Michael?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thanks to the school. I guess one question I had coming in tonight, and I, like Pete, got this this afternoon and have not really had time to comb through it, but what is left in the E&D account?
So our E&D was certified at the end of 2024 at just a little under 2.4 million eventually, once all was said and done. So at the moment, we have budgeted for FY26 $1 million. So in a sense, we have 1.4 million left in certified E&D. It's always
And has there been any, thank you, Michael, has there been any discussion about adding some from the E&D account to this budget?
So, I mean, there is always discussion as to how much of our excess and deficiency we should use to offset the budget. The challenge is, and it was one of the points that was discussed at the last select board meeting, is that there is a risk that these are one-off funds. So the more we use to offset the budget this year, the more we need to offset the budget next year. And as those funds go down, they're less available, and then the funds will then fall back onto the assessment, and we'll see larger increases in the assessment because we're now moving what was previously funded by excess deficiency onto the assessments. And that was actually, there are a couple of extra slides in here about the funds that offset the budget, so like grants and school choice funds, and then also funds that offset the assessments, and that's the money we get from the state, and excess and deficiency. And in both areas, we are relying more on those additional funds to offset the budget. And you know, with that comes a level of risk, and because if those funds dry up or go away, then either we have more substantial cuts we have to make, or we increase our assessments. So, I mean, I guess that's our long answer. Yes, we did consider it. We inched forward, so we increased a little without putting too much risk or the future assessments.
Thank you, Michael. And through you, Mr. Chair, if it's appropriate, and I know we have an agenda item on it, but I'm very interested in hearing more about the 3 sessions versus 4 sessions, and then what is it going to look like when next school season starts, and then we have more special needs kids, but we only have 3 sessions. So because it's budgetary by way of adding back, one half FTE, I'd like to have that discussion now. There seems to be a concern with many parents whose children are affected by this, and reading through the email chains that have been sent to me, and it's not my job to manage the school's budget, thank God. But it seems to me that our taxpayers are extremely concerned about this, and it also seems to me that they're unable to get answers. And one of the other questions I would have related to that would be the 2 positions that were funded previously by grant and that are now in this budget cycle, but they were never discussed during the budget cycle, or at least allegedly never discussed. But based on the detail, the emails that we got from Ryan Edwards and others, I'd really like to understand, and I think this is the forum to understand it, what is going on with this program? How were these decisions made? Why were they made? And I know Dr. Carpenter got into some of it a little while ago, but what's going to happen when we start a new school year and we have more kids with needs? We're going from 25 to 13. What's going to happen?
I mean, well, let me just clarify one thing. Go back and clarify one thing, Michael. One of the things we did do, excess and deficiency was actually increased from 800,000 as we have used in past years to $1 million. So there is built into this 200,000 additional excess and deficiency. In terms of what happens if we have kids from early intervention that we haven't anticipated, we actually have the same risk every year with kindergarten. We project this is how many kindergartners are out there. And there's a lot of sweating until the start of the school year on terms of how many actually, materialize. We have, I believe in, the last 12 years that I've been here, there may have been once or twice where we've suddenly had a need and had to go fill it mid-year, which means I go to the business manager and it's like, okay, well, it's, that's exactly the look Michael gives me. And it's like, okay, we've got to go find that extra 0.5 or, God forbid, an entire, 1.0 for a kindergarten teacher if, all of a sudden, if there was a big housing complex that you don't know about and I don't know about, that all of a sudden happens in Harwich, and there's a need for another section of kindergarten. We've got to come up with it, and and we have to do it, within the budget that gets approved by the taxpayers at town meeting.
Julie?
So,
I'm sorry. Michael, did you have more?
No, it sounds like internally they're preparing for it. And again, I don't manage your budget, nor do I manage your communication. But it seems like there was a failure, and I hope, Dr. Carpenter, that we have your commitment to reach out to those that have been affected by this and that have sent lengthy and very detailed emails and get to the bottom of it, so that they don't feel like they need to do FOIA requests to get information that they have the right to know.
Absolutely.
Julie?
so first of all, I want to thank you for, taking the time to go through the budget, and the school committee to thank you for looking at that, because as I said in my email, I felt like we were a bit late to the party on that. And I just want to correct the article in the paper, which indicated that I was looking for 0.5 to 1%, which was actually inaccurate. I had said if there was any way you could get there, that it would be a great sign of, good faith, a good faith effort. And I certainly think you've done that. I don't take lightly your comments about the fact that all these elements to your budget ultimately affect teachers and students. So I appreciate you taking the time to go through that. I mean, I think, overall, we need to continue to evaluate as we go forward. I mean, technically, I won't be on this board, but I think it's important for both towns to be looking at that. And as much as we can give to the students and to the teachers. And I think ultimately, I understand that some of that becomes an administrative need too, to your point about just hiring one person at 0.5. It's not as simple as that. And I understand that. So first of all, I want to thank you for taking the time and the energy and the effort to do this and get to this point. Having said that, I think that any show of good faith should be appreciated by both towns, and I hope that that helps you in your conversations moving forward April 8th and therefore and onward. So I'll limit my conversation right now to the budget, because we're going to have the more deeper discussion on the integrated pre-K. Michael raised some points that I wanted to follow up on, and I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Julie. I'll say this. I first would like to go backwards to the meeting on Thursday, at the school committee meeting. And I thought that was extremely positive. I thought I received an awful lot of real good, thoughtful, and honest questions from the committee. And it was nice to feel like we were getting on the same page. So I want to thank the school committee publicly. I want to thank you both for being there, and whomever else was in the room listening. My takeaway, if nothing more, was that it felt to me that the school committee understands the struggle that Harwich has with the budget. And as I said at the school committee meeting, there's two issues in play currently. And the first one is this budget. And this is the only one that we have any influence over. The funding formula is the elephant in the room. And again, it felt to me that the school committee understands and feels the same pressure that the town of Harwich feels, because after the meeting, I had a couple conversations with a couple of the school committee members. and they see what's coming down the road, more of this, if this funding formula doesn't get addressed. So I was happy to see that there was a lot of nodding heads on the school committee when I was delivering the answers to their questions. April 8th, 2 p.m., right here in the Griffin Room. It's a public meeting. I would recommend anybody who's interested in not only our budget, but our kids and our school system, to be part of it, to show up and listen and hear firsthand from the mouths of 2 select board members from Harwich and 2 select board members from Chatham, exactly how each side feels. So I look forward to April 8th, and I look forward to that being the first discussion of many. This isn't something that's going to get fixed on April 8th, but it'll certainly be a good start for the town of Harwich. I'm hopeful. Mr. Piekarski will be with me in that meeting. And with that, oh, Pete, sorry?
I'm sorry, I was quickly going through a few of the numbers. Michael, could you go back to the screen with ultimately the savings per school or per district? Sorry, per community?
Oh, yes.
I'll get it
sorry.
right.
Yeah.
So the overall is the 400,418.
Yes.
Which is let's call it 77% Harwich,
Yeah.
brings it to 309, and the balance to Chatham.
Broadly, however, it's not quite, because it's actually, because the way the assessment works,
Yeah, we
which
do.
town pays as elementary school, so because some of those, there's more items on this list for Harwich Elementary School, so some of those.
Oh, so Harwich is actually no.
So it's a slightly bigger saving proportionally than Chatham. Actually, does that make sense?
Proportionally, okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
But the
yeah.
number's still 309.
But yes.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Appreciate that clarification.
So I'm going to go to Joe here, just to make sure I'm accurate with my thought. We have placed this, and we just need to accept or adopt.
Correct.
So that's where we sit right now, and if there's a motion,
I'll make that motion.
excellent.
I move that we accept and adopt as presented.
As presented, because so I move that we accept the Monomoy Regional School District budget as presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any more discussion? Michael, I'm just going to ask, because you're online, anything from you?
Well, the only discussion I have is I'd really like to understand, again, the further the questions on the pre-K program, as that may have a direct result in the budget we're about to vote.
Okay, so we can table this.
Yeah, I'll remove my motion.
Remove motion, remove second?
No.
Okay.
Okay.
Why?
I think Select Board Member McCaskill would like to hear some more information about the integrated preschool from a budget standpoint, and that's an item next on
I
our
will only
agenda.
change the motion at town meeting. We're almost at the point that we need to be at,
We
so
have to
why
close it.
wouldn't we accept and adopt?
We can revise the budget.
Yeah.
That's true. So,
So I'm keeping
I want to show some good faith.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree.
So Select Board Member McCaskill, we can revise after. Does that satisfy?
The pleasure of the board.
Thank you. So a motion and a second, any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Pete?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
Julie?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. 5-0, Joe. Now on to the next, which is the Harwich Integrated Preschool for fiscal year 2026. I'm going to allow the public to speak on this first. So if there's anyone in the public that would like to speak on this, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ryan Edwards again. Give me 1 second. I just have a couple questions. And the first being the historical trends that Melissa McGuire presented on January 9th for the 2024-2025 school year show a number of 34 SWD students. I'm just trying to make sense. So is that 24 up there? So the numbers I have from her presentation, 2022 to 2023 was 29. 23 to 24 was 37, 24 to 25 was 34, and then projected for 2025, 2026 is 13. I'm just wondering if I could get an explanation on the discrepancy.
These are the end of the year numbers, so I don't know if those are October 1 numbers that she did in the presentation. So again, it's, how many students you have depends on at what point you are, what point you are in the year. That's why, at least with the state, they have this arbitrary, when you report out to DESE on what your annual enrollment is and standardize it across all districts, it's the October 1 number. But
Okay.
this is how many were in the program at the end of the year.
Okay, and I'm just curious, for 2025, we're obviously not at the end of that school year yet, and the number that she has for 2024, 2025 is 34. So I'm just curious how there's 9 less. I know you're saying it's that the end of the year numbers, we're not quite there yet.
I can't speak to what
Okay.
that number is.
All right, and then one of the other things I wanted to point out, so like I said in my presentation or my public comments earlier, the average number of SWD students was 28. So right now, there's currently 13 SWD students that are known about for next year. So I just want to explain to everyone, just to clarify, because people probably haven't done as much research into this topic. But the integrated preschool program is a rolling enrollment. So as kids turn 3 years old, if they're identified with a SWD, they get into the preschool. It's not like the regular grade school where you have to be a certain age by this date. So that 13 number can increase from now until June of 2026 next year.
Let me just ask, that's accurate from your position?
Yes.
Okay, great.
All right, and then another question I had, I've heard recently they keep talking about striving that like 1-to-1 ratio, the 49 to 51%. Just going back again through that historical trend slide, the first number I'll give is the SWD students, and the second number will be the community friends. So 15 to 16, it was 33 SWD and 48 community friends. The following year, 37 to 50. Following year, 29 to 49. The following year, 30 to 46. The year after that, 34 to 46. So as you can see, the school district has always added more community friends based on the historical trends that were presented by Melissa McGuire. There was also discussion, I believe, about so there was a discussion about an increase after COVID, and I do want to point out that there was the same number in 2023, 2024, 37, as there was back in 2016, 2017. So I think the numbers just fluctuate every year. I'm not sure we can necessarily chalk it up to just COVID. I'm glad that you did answer the question about what happens if we go over 21, because that is a concern. But I was wondering, so when I asked to restore that 0.5 position, you gave the number, but you said it might include instructional assistants. When you cut that half, the 0.5 position for the integrated preschool, were there also instructional assistants that got cut? Because those were not included in any of the presentations.
I can answer that
Please.
directly. So we, I mean, this is a bit of a cop-out, but we evaluate our instructional assistant needs across the whole district year to year. So it fluctuates with the needs of students, with new individualized education plans. And so sometimes there's a net reduction, so there might be a reduction in one area, but an increase in the need somewhere else. And so it's not always necessarily, when you make a reduction here, a net overall reduction. That said, I mean, and partly my anxiety about saying, yes, it will only cost $62,000 is like, I haven't really worked out the whole, what would the cost be of adding a half section, exactly what would it look like, exactly what are we funding, so it could impact instructional assistance, but I don't know, so I guess don't hold me to that until we've had a chance to work out what exactly it would look like, and that, would require the special education director to be here.
It's also important to note that the instructional assistants are largely dictated by the children with special needs, their individual plans. So, so some of them have profound needs, and the plan will say, that there needs to be a one-to-one with that individual. So a lot of it depends on not just, do the numbers tick up to 21 and beyond, but who is in the grouping that shows up.
Okay.
And then I just have one more question. So I know that the team chair position for the preschool is shared with the Chatham Elementary School at 50-50 split. So I did ask Melissa McGuire, and I asked the question, if we're reducing the number of integrated preschool classrooms because we're projecting a 60% decline in enrollment, I asked if they were also planning on reducing Harwich's share of the team chair position, and the answer was just no, not at this moment. So I was wondering if you could explain the reasoning behind that.
I mean, so the reality is these programs, like a lot of the time, team chairs are working at more than 100%. Their time is fully used up. All of it in traveling between two buildings. So although there may be a small reduction in the number of programs, we're also, that person is also dealing with the number of number of IEPs there are, whether they're in kindergarten classes. So it's not, it's very hard to say, okay, there's 8 students less here, so we'll cut X percentage from our position, because the workload is not necessarily driven just by the numbers.
Okay.
And it's, and often in these positions are shared across they're shared across the elementary schools. It's hard to say for a whole year exactly how the workload is going to fluctuate. So sometimes we have to use a rule of thumb. So like, let's say for this group of positions are going to be half. Sometimes we are able to get into more detail, and like some of our specialists will say, okay, that's 0.2 here and 0.4 there and 0.3 there. But it gets, it does get ridiculous, and trying to move half percentages or 0.50s around, it's not realistic. It doesn't really reflect what's going on in the district. So yes, we sometimes use a rule of thumb. It doesn't necessarily need to get changed year to year. But we do evaluate it every year and year to year, and if there's a significant change across a number of positions, we will make an adjustment. But that wasn't necessarily in this case.
Okay, and I believe that, just to clarify, that I believe there's a separate team chair for K through
Yes,
through
sorry,
4
you're right, yes.
at the Harwich Elementary School. And Mr. Chair, I was just wondering, Select Board Member McCaskill touched upon the question regarding the mental health coordinator in the BCBA. Would I be out of order to bring that now? I know we moved on to the next agenda item.
I can answer that.
No, I think you're fine. I think you just did it. Go ahead, Michael.
So we do. So it is true. We had 2 positions. One was previously funded from ESSER funds, which were from the federal government to respond to COVID, and that was a position which we moved into the general fund in order to maintain it. And there was discussion at that time. About moving positions and maintaining positions using both partly the general fund and also school choice funds, which we also used to offset the budget. There was another position which was a BCBA, so this was a lot. So this was previously funded as a contracted service under another grant IDA, but we really struggled to get these services, and these are, again, legally required services we have to provide. We really struggled to get them. So we found a person who weren't able to get contract services, so we were able to find a person who's willing to be hired into that position. So we posted it and hired it. If you're in the grant there's a sort of fee you have to pay essentially if you hire them through a grant. So we kind of moved them to the general fund, and at the same time moved some transportation costs out of the general fund into the grant. So it didn't sort of mitigated the impact in the general fund while maximising the benefit for the district and ensuring we were able to fill that position and provide those services. So it wasn't, yeah, I mean, I appreciate, like, you know, there's things moving around, but it was not, we weren't adding additional services because we were already providing those services for a long time through contract services and then through an employee position. And by moving transportation costs around, we were able to kind of mitigate, you know, limit the impact on the budget.
Okay, I appreciate that.
I mean, I think,
Sorry, go ahead.
I'm just going to say, you know, and I guess I understand a lot of the things we're talking about are around, you know, in theory it's drive facts and numbers, but these are students who, as you said, age throughout the year, and so these numbers in the program change, you know, and that's why we're just estimating how many students are going to be in the program next year, and that's what's driving all these decisions. Just how many students.
Julie has a
So
follow-up.
I just want to follow up while we're on this subject, rather than bring everybody back to this, because we all know how these meetings go on. So following up on some of Ryan's questions, the question on the reduction in the team chair makes me think, to your point, that, you know, it's a person in that role, so
Yeah.
you can't just reduce a person by 0.75 or whatever. But ultimately, if these numbers grow, to your point that you're thinking that they won't go beyond 21, but we understand that you really don't have control over that. That's an estimate, right? So then I would go back to saying, okay, so worst case scenario, say it does go beyond 21. You already have somebody who's in that position, who's maybe, and I have no idea, but maybe have less work on their plate for the moment, but they'd be ready to take on if the numbers got back to where you expected them to be, or even grew. Is that a correct statement, or?
Yeah, so we would have to flex if the number got over 21. But if I'm correct, I think we know who might be in the pipeline, I think, out through the calendar year.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it's that question of from January to the end of June.
Next year.
Next year. That's the window, we'll say, of uncertainty. And, you know, so we would anticipate, based on what we've seen in the past, that we should be able to be fine with resections, and that it's not going to go up over 21.
Okay.
And one can be wrong, too.
Yeah.
But
Okay, so, and I don't want to interrupt Ryan's train of thought, but I'm just trying to condense it so that we're staying on the subjects and don't have to
Yeah.
go back. But having said that, if we're down to 2 programs in the elementary school for the integrated, so if you're down to 2, and yet the numbers that when we're looking at your charts.
So we have 3 sections. So that 13, that's 3 sections, so it could go up to 21, 7 students with disabilities in each of 3 sections.
So, you're calculating in possibly an additional amount to get to the 21?
Right, so
Yeah.
we're leaving ourselves buffer.
Right.
Just-
So, but one classroom is being reduced, am I misunderstanding
Right,
that?
so in present year, there are 4 classrooms.
Yeah.
You know, so the 25 students with disabilities are spread amongst 4 classrooms this year. But again, given the number 13, and that we're not seeing that, we don't see anything out there that says that that's going to trip over 21. Is why we felt that, you know, from a sharpening pencil standpoint, that's where we can reduce.
A classroom,
Right.
okay. And so I guess my only other question on that is, when I'm looking at Harwich and Chatham, both in the students with disabilities increasing over time, and then the high needs, which I understand is a cumulative number, which could be various columns that are on this list. But if they're increasing, and even though, as you said, there's a decrease technically right now in the number of kids that you have identified, or at least on your horizon, then when you look at those numbers, the one thing that makes me a little nervous for this going forward is if you do have some sort of blip to the point of Select Board McCaskill, to the point of Ryan, and I understand that the peers are only there is depending on how many children you have with special needs. They're offset by that. But my question really relates to when I look at these numbers and see how they've grown, how is it makes me a little worried for you guys to look at that and say, well, hopefully, we're not gonna get beyond 21, right? Because the numbers seem to tell a different story, and that would be my concern.
And keep in mind that the staffing that we're carrying this year is based on, we didn't adjust staffing from the FY '24 number of 34, so this is us looking at, okay, the staffing was this in FY '24, it's gone down.
Right.
And now we're seeing it go down again.
Again, okay.
And, time to adjust staffing. And we do think that we should be safe. And Michael, at the same time, is hoping that I don't come to him sometime, mid-October saying, hey, looks like the superintendent was wrong, and we need to go and, find it somewhere.
I would say one of the, and I was just trying to find the figures, but one of, the pre-K is to some extent a subset of kindergarten. We are seeing a decline in kindergarten. And to the earlier point about the impact of COVID, is one of the things we think happened is a larger percentage of students at that age. So there's fewer students, but a larger percentage of them required special education services. So that's why we've seen an increase, even though the overall numbers of students of that age in our two towns has gone down. So that's why that's why these numbers do make some sense to us, because there's a narrative that makes sense that the overall number is going down. So that's why, to be honest, the increase that we saw in the last couple of years kind of threw us for a loop, because we, overall numbers are coming down. So why were the pre-K numbers going up? And we think partly it was because of the special education pre-K numbers were going up, partly because of the impact of COVID and the failure to identify students needed for services.
So this is year 2 trending down?
Overall, pardon, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And it's a subset of the pre-K.
Ryan, do you have any more you want to add?
I believe that's it. I want to thank you for answering my questions.
Thanks, Ryan.
Like I said, we've been trying to get some answers for about four months now, so thank you, Mr. Chair, for facilitating this. I really appreciate it.
I'll apologize for making you stand there for 25 minutes waiting to apologize. Michael, thank you for being here, Ryan. Michael, do you have anything you want to add?
No, I'll keep it brief. I think that I've said enough, and Dr. Carpenter said, and I can't remember what his last words were, but the number of families facing economic challenges, and I can't remember the increase that he pointed out, but something we all need to keep in mind as we're voting all these projects and all of these budgets and where we're going to go next year, because as much as I agree with the funding formula, it's got to change. The likelihood of it changing for next year's budget cycle is slim and none, in my opinion. And then it was nice to hear Dr. McMillan and Michael McMillan and Dr. Carpenter explain the difference between Ryan Edwards' numbers and the 13 that they're projecting, and the fact that they can find the money. And I hope that because this is on tape, that we actually do find the money if these vulnerable children show up at a much higher number than they're projecting.
And I think we also have to just acknowledge and I get the angst out there, that you've got, right now there's roughly 30-some families that are able to have a free peer slot to have a great preschool experience 4 days, 4 days a week for half a day, and it's free. Yeah. And it doesn't hit the town's voucher, so the town's not having to pay for that. And we're saying, okay, what we're seeing in the cards is only 13 children with disabilities, that there might be half the number of peer slots. So those families, there's going to be disruption there, and it's sort of like, okay, well, what are the options? And so the next couple slides we have are some of the options that are out there.
Okay. Anyone else on the board? Pete, Don, anything?
Are we going to dig further in their presentation?
Yes. Yeah,
Yes.
sure.
I'll hold off for now.
Okay. I think, yeah, go ahead,
So,
thank you.
so the other thing that has come up is at Chatham Elementary School, and I fully admit as superintendent, when the decision, the conversation was, okay, let's not look at Chatham for the preschool, let's keep it at Harwich. And at the table, I said to the school committee, I said, well, there's a free classroom available. I know from just going to the Chatham boards that, that their hope is that there's a preschool of some sort at Chatham Elementary School. Let's find a way to do the most good that we can with that classroom. So what we put in place, and this does not hit the Harwich assessment at all because it's at Chatham Elementary School. It's going to be called the PUPS Pre-K program. It's a full day. We anticipate it being a full day program, school year length and school day length. Again, that for some working families that works for them. For others, it doesn't. There was a program very similar to this when I first came here at Harwich Elementary, How to Make Way for Kids. So it's trying to do a lot of what Make Way for Kids did. It's looking at who in our community isn't accessing preschool. What are those vulnerable families that are experiencing homeless, housing insecurity, low income, challenges with transportation, and we know just from our own data that a number of our EL families or English language learner families aren't accessing preschool as much as those without or those who speak English as a first language. So we've looked at this and developing this at Chatham Elementary School. It'd be open to the whole district. We're still working out a lot of the logistics and have yet to have an open house, but this is something that could be an option. Again, this is not one that we would go and be accepting vouchers for, and it's not moving money out of one pocket into the other. The other program that does exist at Harwich Elementary School, as Mr. Edwards brought up, is the YMCA program. So we did a needs assessment back in 2019, and what came out of that needs assessment is that there is a lack of available childcare options for our families with 3 to 4 year olds, and there's pretty much a complete absence of infant toddler care. So we were really looking for a community partner in 2019 that could go and pick up from cradle all the way up to heading into kindergarten. The YMCA was an organization we partnered with. Great things about the Y. Even then, they have scholarships that they offer. So no family was denied care because they couldn't afford it, and that was before the vouchers even came into place. The WISE program is something really sort of centered around trying to accommodate working families as best as possible. It's a full day, 5-day-a-week program, full year long, for ages 3 months to 5 years of age. The program only closes for 11 major holidays each year. When it snows, they're often they're usually open. They were during COVID, they were the only program in this half of the Cape that was open, and they stayed open to make sure that they could go, that we were able to go and accommodate first responders, and that accommodate doctors and nurses. So they served a key role for us. The YMCA is also a Head Start. They've taken on the Head Start grant. So they're really accommodating a lot of different families with need. The other thing to also understand is, as of last week, there are 30 families on the waiting list to get into the YMCA program at Harwich Elementary School. And in fact, when I spoke to the program coordinator there, she said, their families now, they seem to not call because they know how long the waiting list is. My understanding is that the Y is hoping to open soon. Of course, soon has been the last several years, but they're hoping to open a program at Cape Tech, which will hopefully expand more options for, for families. But this, even though the program's there, they're still in need in our community, particularly when it comes to that infant toddler care. There was questions about the revenue piece, and maybe I can turn that over to Michael and he can kind of talk the revenue side of the picture.
So we receive just over $17,000 a year in rental from the YMCA, and a portion of that $14,000 is used to offset the assessments. So it kind of comes off the top rather than being a portion between the towns, and which means that essentially it has to work through a number of steps, but essentially it ends up sort of offsetting Harwich's assessment to the tune of around 77%, just because of all the different percentages break down now. So it reduces Harwich's assessment by $13,365. So that's how it works.
Thank you.
It's a low rent because it's there to cover custodial costs. There are days that program's open when the rest of Harwich Elementary School isn't open. It's not there to go and make money, because if we were charging $50,000, they'd just have to pass that onto onto our families.
And the idea, and Chatham students can attend as well, and it's a district, asset that is theirs for both our towns, and that's why with this and with other revenue in different parts of the budget, where you tend to use enrollment to determine how the revenue is assessed to the towns, the schools in the towns. So, for example, should I jump onto with school choice, we also use total enrollment at that school rather than school choice numbers to determine how school choice revenue is split up between the schools and how that benefits. And so in that case, Harwich is a net benefiter because they have a larger proportion of the total number of students, and so get a larger proportion of this revenue offset, as opposed to the number of school choice students, which is proportionally lower at Harwich Elementary School. So swings and roundabouts, some things benefit one town over the other and some town, and then something else is in their favour, in the case school choice, which makes a big difference to the Harwich assessment. So I think that's us on...
That's on preschool.
Mm-hmm. Any questions on the preschool?
If I could,
Please.
do you rent any other spaces within your buildings to any other entity?
Not like that. We have, you can facilitate rentals so people can use the buildings, for events or one-off, but we have no other where we're renting out a space for a significant amount of time, like with the YMCA.
And what do you do with the one-off rental?
We have a revolving account, so we have a building use facility rental account. It goes in there, it pays for it pays for custodians, and actually just custodians, and then we can use it for repairs to the buildings and so on.
Okay. Is the contract with the Y year to year?
No, we're actually we're about to go out to bid again. So we procure it again now. So
And is it typically a 3-year contract?
Yeah, 3 or 5, depending. We've given them longer contracts.
So your current presentation says that you have 3 rooms and 1 office space that they utilize?
Yeah.
Is that the plan going forward?
Yes. They're using 2. I think 1 has just been used for, they have 3 access to 3 classrooms and 1 office space, yes.
So at this point, at this point in time, there's no plan to increase their utilization of the school?
No.
No.
Okay. Does the state, and I guess this is kind of going back to the integrated system, the integrated preschool, does the state give any direct funding for that program?
For the preschool program?
For the integrated preschool program?
Yes. So they're part of our Chapter 70. So when we submit our numbers, enrollment numbers to the state, they're included, they're half day, so they're 0.5 included in our...
So when you receive funding from the state, it clearly indicates that it's for that piece of the program? I can't recall, it's been too long.
So it gets a little complicated because our total enrollment is going down. So, so year to year, we submit on October 1st our enrollment, and that goes into the state's formula, the Chapter 70 formula. So they have literally the grid, which is like, okay, you have this many number of students, say in pre-K, they get allocated this amount, but then it just all flows into a total amount that we receive from the state, which we can then spend to offset education anywhere we like.
Right, okay.
Just, to be honest, it just comes in, it goes into our general fund that offsets our total budget. Where it gets a little complicated is because our overall enrollment is going down and we're held harmless. So say 1 year you've got 100 students, and the following year you've got 90, they just fund you at the 100 students level. So you're held harmless for enrollment reductions, which benefits us if we're in a district like us where our enrollment has gone down slightly. So it means that so that's why it's a little complicated, because just adding one student, unless it takes you over your prior year's enrollment, it doesn't impact your funding.
Right, but if you went up by 10, then it does.
It would,
right?
yes, absolutely.
All right. And I understand how you break down the rental income from the Y.
Yeah.
Was there any consideration to applying it strictly to Harwich Elementary School? 100% of the funds? And I know we're not talking big money, right? $17,000. So
yeah.
we're getting 78%, 77%
Yeah.
right now, so.
So it'd make like $3,000-4,000 difference.
Right, so,
So no. Partly because, so we are in a different, 2 years ago, we were one district. And so all the money, didn't really matter because everybody was assessed just based on enrollment. So it didn't matter which school cost how much. So, and because this is not a big ticket item, it didn't seem worthwhile, especially as it does impact, you can have Chatham elementary students, or students from Chatham attending the YMCA, so they do benefit from it. So, and the cost, it is not like the Harwich assessment cost goes up as a result, because a lot of the custodial costs are already included in the, we don't have a lot of hours additional because it's just during the regular school day that the program's there, so it doesn't add a lot of custodian hours. It's only if the school's closed when we have the YMCA program running. So the net impact on the the net impact in the Harwich assessment is not significant.
okay. And last question, I know I'm all over the place, but you folks are probably getting used to that by now.
Sorry, yeah, I like it.
Oh, shit, I'm gonna lose it again, guys.
No, don't.
Don't.
You're not shocked, I'm sure.
Yep. Gone. Sorry.
Wave bye.
Yep.
Wave bye.
See you later. Here it goes again.
That's it.
Sorry.
Anyone else on board
I
before
didn't
we
have
go to
any
the next
thoughts to
slide?
lose.
Okay.
This is the restorative justice.
I just put this in the packet, so, I think two of the positions that folks have brought up are just the curriculum folks and restorative justice. So, there's a link, and there was back-to-back presentations that I think might give you a little better view of what is the restorative justice approach, and then the good that's come out of the curriculum office. And I think, particularly if you look at that list of things that got cut, those curriculum directors are gonna have to go pick up a lot of the professional development that, that got cut from outside sources, is gonna have to come in-house now.
I do just have a couple of slides. There was a comment that Mr. Howell made last week about the sort of sources and uses, so the other funds that we use to offset or that are planned, and one way or another allow us to provide services that are not necessarily included in the budget. So we have our ESSA, which is Title I grant, and I've given I won't go through all of them, but I've given a description of where the money comes from, what it can be used for, and how the amounts are determined. And as you can see, we are increasing our plan for the use of these funds into FY26 to help to offset the assessments and the budget. And then likewise, so it's just the way the assessment is written. Some funds help to reduce that budget number you see, and then some funds help to reduce the assessments. And these are the ones that help to reduce the assessments. So that's Chapter 70. That's some primary funding for education we receive from the state. Our excess deficiency and a few others are less impactful. And state transportation, that's the one that's increased and why the transportation assessment went down this year. And there also, we've increased our use of those funds. And so that's where, you can see we are increasing our use of excess and deficiency. And so if we don't keep it at $1 million next year, that means the assessments go up $200,000. So that's just to bear in mind. If we increase our reliance on these funds, then we have to be able to keep using them, or we impact the services or the assessments. All right, and then we're getting into...
Before you...
Yes.
Sorry, Don.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't want to leave that buried in your commentary. I mean, the reason I did it, and I'm sure you understand the reason,
Yes.
for the public to understand, it was one of these to address the further we go, the behinder we get scenarios where, okay, we're good
Yep.
this year, but it's because you cherry-pick some things that can't be
Yep.
replicated in subsequent years. And it's really a concern that we be at a higher plateau and then add more money into the equation because of inflation and other things. It's more than just this year, it's much more next year.
Yeah, unless we're able to continue to draw on these funds. But I agree, I mean, there's a general message here is the cost of education is getting higher, and it comes to all these points to the superintendent said about the level of services we have to provide, then, recruitment and retention challenges on the Cape, inflation, cost of services, cost of facility, all these things are putting pressure on our budget. And right now, the way we're trying to meet that pressure is drawing on these funds as much as we can and the assessment, and trying to level that so we're not hitting the assessment too high. So, we don't just come with the first number we think of when we come to our assessment. We do try and maximize other revenue. But I agree, like this, it's not necessarily a long-term solution.
And that's why I agree with my colleagues about this needs to be an ongoing, I don't want anybody to feel like we're sandbagging them at the last minute, but it has to be an ongoing discussion. This could well wind up being a respite rather than a solution.
Yeah. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
So now we're getting into debt. So this is really around the middle school debt project. There was a couple of questions. Should I just continue?
Continue, yeah, I have a question on this, but you'll probably answer it, knowing you.
Well, so this is responding to some of the requests. So I did put together just a short list of all the major debt projects that we see in the next sort of 5 to 10 years. These project start dates. These are target dates. I wouldn't, don't hold me to them because it does depend a little bit on how the preceding projects go, and availability of funds, both in assessments and also the grants. For example, you can see I put a little triangle next to all the ones where we'd be applying for MSBA funding. That's Massachusetts School Building Authority funding. They help to reimburse projects. If we don't go into the program, then we have to make a decision at that point. Do we postpone the project if we can? In some cases, I think that will be possible. Or do we have to try and find other ways to proceed? However, this is a list of all the major projects I see on a horizon in the next 5 to 10 years that we'll need to give some contemplation to. Some of them are, most of them are district-wide, some of them are just for Chatham, and some are just at Harwich Elementary School. And they're, not insignificant, but would be remiss if we weren't keeping an eye on them. And then I also did include, these are much smaller items that would not expect to require debt. So smaller projects we do sort of year to year, the most significant of which are generators that we know we need to replace at some of our schools. Some of these will hit one or other elementary school, and some will be split across the district assessment. Okay, so that was kind of background with our other projects, and then it was on to the middle school restoration project, and we had, one of the questions was like a bit more detail on exactly how this will be funded and paid for. So we have prepared debt schedules, which we include in your packets, which basically, how much it would cost for us if we went out to borrow the entirety of the budget required for the siding project. And we also included, the siding project on its own, the roofing project on its own, and then a sort of combination of the two. That they're based on 25 years, an estimated interest of 4.25%, and on the assumption that we'll borrow the full amount. And, I said last week, and I really hope to be able to deliver on this, but we really don't want that to be our final cost. We're hoping that the budget will be somewhat less, the final cost will be somewhat less than the budget, because it does include contingencies and so on that we hope, or not all of them will come to fruition. There is also a little, there's just, you might notice, there's a funky thing in this debt schedule where we've assumed that we'll do short-term borrowing for the first year, just so we're not borrowing $11 million all at once, because we're not allowed to make interest on money that we borrow like that. So we borrow a short amount, pay it out until we know the total amount of the project, and then borrow what was remaining all at once. And then that's when the 25 years would start. And, you know, just underline, the actual cost of the borrowing will depend on the interest rate we get, and the final cost of the project, and the duration of the debt. So depending on what the market looks like when we finally go out to debt, obviously the shorter we can go out, the better, because that will save us money in the long run, but you know, that might push up your annual costs. So there's a balance there and determine whether you do a 20-year or 25-year debt. And then we did sort of estimate what that impact might be on individual on sort of the average single-family tax bill. I am grateful to Ed for just giving me the nod. All the mistakes are mine, but Ed told me I wasn't wildly off. But so what we did is we broke down what the principal and interest and the total cost might be, and then what the average annual payment might be on the debt, and then how that would impact the single-family tax bill. Again, lots of caveats around this, because and not apart from anything else, this is based on the current FY25 tax rate, the average home value right now, and the tax rate increases are to the nearest a cent. It also assumes the final amount of the project. Sorry, I'm getting all my caveats, and it also assumes the foundation enrollment breakdown, which, as we know, changes year to year. That all said, the average single tax family impact for just phase 1 in Harwich is $58 a year, and just shy of $17 a year in Chatham. And then if we combine both the phase 1 and phase 2 of the project, it gets up to $77.51 for Harwich a year and $33.49 in Chatham. So, and then the other caveat I would say is that's the gross cost. So that's not net. So if we don't have these projects, that's not to say there wouldn't be an impact on tax bills, because we would have repair bills, we know, for those schools, and there may be other projects. Likewise, if there's other things that happen in this that offset the assessment in other ways, like we have some other revenue, like transportation again, that would help to offset that impact on families. But, you know, with all the information we have, this is probably our best guesstimate of where the impact on tax bills at maximum it could be. And of course, we hope it will be less than that.
Any questions on that so far? Michael?
Yeah, just quickly, the average house value that was used, what is it?
Give me a minute, I'll find it. It's the average house value right now. All right, I will find it in a second. Do you know it?
Are you looking for?
$968,829.
Michael, you just asked the wrong guy.
I know.
Actually, I asked it in general terms, so I wasn't necessarily asking Mike.
Yeah,
But thank you, Ed, for answering that. Now, if you look at restoration project phase 1 and phase 1 siding and windows, and phase 2 roof, is the top number combined with the bottom number, or is that together?
No, the bottom number is the total. The bottom number, that's $77 a year, includes both the siding, windows, and the roof.
Phase 1 and phase 2?
Yeah. So phase 1 is more expensive. Phase 2 is less expensive and offset by MSBA so reimbursement. So that's what helps to keep that impact a little lower.
Thank you. Helpful numbers, and this is what I'm hoping that we'll get later in our budget related to some of the larger projects that are being put before the town.
Any other board members to this point?
No, I'll hold off.
Just a quick question on my end. When the town of Harwich voted to authorize the borrowing of the first 2.5 million,
Yeah,
the split was a little bit different.
it
Right?
was.
I think we were a point and a half lower
maybe not, maybe like 0.1.5 lower, not as much,
Not as much? Okay.
yeah.
So do we get the benefit, you know where I'm going with this, do we get the benefit of that split for the first 2.5 million? No? Okay.
Nice try.
I figured I'd ask.
but
You
that's-
can't blame a guy for trying.
Yeah, but that's the
Okay.
point. The point is, but you will also benefit if it goes the other way.
Yeah, sure, sure. Thanks, Michael. Okay, continuing right along with your,
That's our last slide. So
Okay.
there were other documents. There was we also just had the summary of the budget assessment in your pack, and also the debt schedules. But I believe that's my last slide.
now, Pete?
Well, you laugh, but it was actually a valid point, right? Because as this continues on, and if the ship keeps going the way it does, and all of a sudden you exceed 80% or 85%, that shift does come here. Now,
Yes.
again, we look at, $77 a year for, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. No, you're right.
No.
And I only laugh because I'm not glib about the impact on the tax.
No, you were glib. That was totally glib.
I was just,
100%.
it's just because we talked about it a lot, that like, it will change year to year.
Yeah.
and it will depend- Yeah.
No, I agree, and,
Very affect you.
look, you can laugh at the chair all you want. I'm with you on that, I'll support you. So, I didn't take that as an offense. So, no, I just wanted to point out the fact that
Yeah.
this is, most likely gonna escalate. And again, we look at, it's $78 a year. Okay, it's $78 a year on top of what you're already paying, on top of all the other projects that are going on. And next thing you know, $78 a year, $150 a year, $300 a year, $500 a year, becomes real money.
Yeah.
Right, and it impacts some of the people who are really struggling, some of the families that you're trying to help, right?
Yeah.
And so that's where we all play this game, and I'm not criticizing you folks, we're all playing this game of how do we balance it and keep people in their homes and food on the table and, clothes on their children. That's all the reality of it, so I appreciate what you're doing and bringing it to the table. And real quickly, I look at, quickly over the 5 years, looks up to approximately about $30 million, and again, in today's numbers, that are either district or Harwich owned. And of that, about 24 million that would go directly to the Harwich side. So again, that's based on the 77 number right now. If I, with your indulgence, Mr. Chair, if I could, it came back to me, so I'd like to, if I could ask.
Hurry up.
I'm sorry, we've moved on already.
And I know neither one of you operate the Y. Just curious, is the voucher programs that both communities offer, do they accept those vouchers at the Y?
Yes.
They do. Okay, thank you for that. That's it. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, thank you both. I think we still have one more thing. No, I think that's it. That is it. I brought you guys Milky Ways.
I'll never contact you.
There you go.
In
Thanks
the
for being
past
here.
few weeks, you hadn't even begun yet, so you're doing all right.
He may be sending you home, but make sure you don't leave town.
Thank you.
I think Meredith wants to talk.
I think they covered it all.
All right. Thank you. Okay, moving on to item B, draft 2025 annual town meeting warrant. Votes may be taken. Mr. Town Administrator.
Finance Director and I are looking for our candy.
Depends on how well you do.
If we
Noted
get
for the
our
record.
candy from you.
So, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, it's our understanding, as you said before, I'm joined by our interim finance director, town accountant Ed Spellman. I believe you have, so you've dispatched Article 5, so to speak, which is related to the Monomoy article. Article 4 is the town's operating budget. Article 9 is on the middle school project, if anything else needed to be done on that. Article 54 was a question on the revolving funds, I believe you had, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I do want to note, and I appreciate the town clerk has advised me, Article 37 is inadvertently omitted from the present warrant, so when you do vote to close, I would just ask that the motion allow staff to conduct any scrivener's reviews, which would be pagination and things of that nature.
And do explicitly restore.
Correct.
30%.
So back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, I think the first order of business would be Article 4. And I believe the board had several questions, hence the reason Mr. Spellman is here with us tonight. So I'm going to turn it over to the board. The board can have their time to ask their questions that they need answered prior to moving on this article. So Who's first? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I got nothing new.
I don't have anything.
Michael?
Stand by.
Standing.
My question, and I believe everybody knows, Mr. Chair, I asked you, but it's related to local receipts and the increases that are being projected. And I asked the question, I did talk to Eric Kinshirf about it. Eric was going to talk to Ed about it, and I believe the town administrator. So I guess I'll leave it at that, because I'm sure they understand what my question is. If they don't, I'll repeat it.
Y'all need it repeated?
Is this on its own?
Stand by, Michael.
If you want me to,
No,
do you
stand
want me to
by.
expedite?
Stand by, I think they're digging.
Mr. Chairman, if I could,
Yes,
as you look
please.
at Article 4, you have a total budget now of $48,127,931. To the question that Mr. Spellman and I will speak to, portion of the funding for that right now is predicated on $17,414,500 for our estimated local receipts. It's my understanding after your colleague spoke with Mr. Kinshirf, that Mr. Spellman and Mr. Kinshirf spoke, there was an analysis of those estimated local receipts, and I think I've bought you enough time to know. There we
Yes,
go.
and I don't have that sheet with me. I'm sorry, I apologize, but
That was it.
no.
Okay.
I had submitted to you a summary kind of how the calculations I had made for motor vehicle excise, the state, the meals tax, and then also the local rooms tax. And I had taken and basically updated the actual fiscal '24 numbers with the figures that we've had collected to date for fiscal '25, and had made projections on those for fiscal year '26. And based on those numbers, and after speaking to Eric, we talked about potentially coming down in the, on the local estimated receipts for the meals tax by approximately $100,000. I think he talked about 350 potentially on the meals tax, on the hotel tax. Now, again, in the information I had presented, the first two payments that we've actually received through December 30 are the larger payments for the hotel tax, and the third and fourth quarter payments that we will receive in March and June will be on lower amounts. And how I came up with projecting the numbers going forward, I had taken those actual 25 amounts and projected about a 5% increase for those for the hotel tax and then also the meals tax. And we can make adjustments to those two numbers, and that would reduce the total of the local estimated receipts from approximately 17.4 million to 16,950,000. And that number is approximately 10% less than the actual number the actual number for fiscal year 2024. So I believe with those reductions and leaving the motor vehicle excise number, the projection the same, if we were to run short in any one line, I believe funds in the other lines could cover some of the shortfalls there. Does that answer your question, Michael?
Yeah, I'm just trying to follow along here. I'm now seeing in the packet under sources and uses. I'm not seeing the sources and uses table with the estimated local receipts. I am now going to refer to what looks like an email that was sent to the board fiscal year 2026, and it's motor vehicle excise, local options meals, and other excise hotel. And I guess I just looking at the actual 6 months, so from 12/31/2024, I would imagine, Eric, and correct me if I'm wrong, that's the start of the fiscal year until 12/31/24. So it would be July 1st through December 31st?
That's correct.
Yeah, so like for motor vehicle excise tax, and I'm not fully understanding what's before me right now, but it says 449,000 actually collected. Is there another line that's been added here that would change the
No,
actual collected?
That's the actual collected for the first 6 months. The motor vehicle excise is done on a calendar year basis. So calendar year 2025, we received the first commitment, and I believe that you have that a column to the right. You'll see commitment number 1 for motor vehicle excise.
Commitment number 1, it looks to me like commitment number 1 was 2396,382. And then it says estimate collections 1.917.
Right, so that first commitment was $2.9 million, and what I projected that we collect in the next from January to June, I believe the first commitment, I was projecting an 80% collection, and then commitment 2, which will be going out in the next month, I've used the same number that we had collected for last year, and I'm projecting that at a 75% rate. And then the third commitment that goes out in May, I'm projecting a 70% collection rate for the motor vehicle excise. So the bulk of the commitments, those 3, are the bulk of the fiscal 25 motor vehicle excise. The 400,000 is what we've collected for the first month based on prior year commitments that were outstanding and additional ones that we mailed out after July 1st and before December 31st.
Okay, thank you for that. And then now the next number, local options meals tax.
Yes.
Looks like actual collected, which would include July and August, obviously our 2 busiest months, and September, probably our 3rd busiest month. 546,501, is that the actual collected for that 6-month period?
Those are the actual for September 30, December 31, that's correct. And then I
Okay.
made projections for the 3rd and 4th. I'm sorry.
No, you go ahead.
I made projections based on the prior year's actual numbers for the 3rd and 4th quarter. You see for the hotel tax, it's significantly less than the first 2 quarters because it's covering the trailing 6 months, which there's less hotel activity over the winter months.
Thank you for that. So this spreadsheet that you did for us that I'm looking at, I believe I got it via email, does that reflect the $350,000 change that you're talking about?
Those are showing the numbers of the estimates of how I came up with the numbers that were presented in the original local receipts for the motor vehicle excise at $2,750,000, the $750,000 for the local options meals tax, and the hotel tax.
Okay, now in further review, your recommendation, I heard 2 numbers based on prior conversations with Eric and yourself and the town administrator. I heard a $100,000 reduction, and then I believe I heard a $350,000 reduction. Am I accurate?
Based on the numbers that I had shown these, I worked with Eric on, we were looking at, I believe it was $1.4 million for the hotel excise. And for the local options meals tax, again, he had talked about a $600,000 number. And again, on the spreadsheet I had submitted to you, you'd see I had a higher number, closer to the $750,000 for the meals tax. Again, I was using a 5% increase over the prior year. And I was basically, part of that 5% is just dealing with an inflation rate or an increase in the cost of the meals would also provide an increase in the local options meals tax for the town.
All right, and in your opinion, what would the recommendation be to lower these numbers by? Given that we're not looking at it on the actual budget right now, what would your opinion be? You know, right now we're showing a 12%, 8%, and a 60% increase, but I guess I'm more interested in dollar amount for now rather than the percentage increase. What would be a comfortable, if the board agrees that we should reduce this, what would be a comfortable number that we could reduce this by? Because quite frankly, I don't know how we go from June 30th, 12/31, June 30th to 12/31 with the actual collections, and then just project out and then have that kind of an increase, 12%, 8%, 60% in today's market, with everything that we just heard on the school budget and everything that I'm hearing business-wise, well, at least the majority of what I'm hearing business-wise and what's going on in the country, I'm not comfortable with these rates and I can't support it. And Mr. Chair, I'll leave it at that. I do have I guess we'll see where the board goes with this, but I do have one other question related to the budget when we're done with this.
Thank you, Michael. Don? Julie? Pete?
I don't have any.
Nothing from Julie? Nothing from Don?
So if we're going to reduce, well, if the theory or thought process is to reduce local receipts by $450,000, which again, I don't want to get in percentages either, but what you're saying, Ed, is that that's essentially 90% of the 2024 actuals. Okay.
Right, the 2024 actual for the local option meals tax, we collected $667,000. And I had projected a slight increase of 5%, and that got me to the $750,000 number that I was looking at.
Okay, but, so if you take the 100,000 and the 350 you mentioned, that's reducing the total of local receipts by 450,000.
Reducing those two categories by 450,000, yes.
And by doing so, that puts our budget out of balance. Correct, Mr., if I can, please, to Joe, the town administrator?
It possibly could. If you're looking at Article 4, the moderator has said that the way that the language has always been presented, the estimated cost is what we're showing on that line of estimated cost and what we're showing in Appendix B. The table that you see there for funding sources are estimated funding sources. If any of those forecasts didn't hold true, the town would seek other funding sources to continue to balance its budget. So if the board wants to reduce any of the subtotal number of local receipts or taxes, and you don't identify any other sources, you don't have a balanced budget. If you're looking to reduce the 17.4 to a 16 point something number, I would look to have the offset be taxes. That doesn't mean we couldn't have the offsets be other funding sources. But I guess the overall point is the board has a budget of $48,127,931. And that's what the article shows and what Appendix B shows. Town meeting does not vote necessarily on the funding sources per se. And I say that because the motion could be simply crafted to say that Article 4 be accepted and adopted, and that the town rely upon all available funds from raise, appropriate, or transfer to defray the charges. Meaning, we wouldn't have to specify per se all of the funding sources. So you can modify any numbers in the funding source table if that's your intent. Are you looking to then amend your budget?
Well, that's my question, right? Because if we don't, then we're telling the townspeople that our projection is 47.7, or whatever the number is, in operating budget sources.
And sources, correct.
And 48
Yep.
in 127 in uses.
Yep.
So we go into town meeting telling them we're out of budget. Now, I understand their projections, but we still go into town meeting telling them we're out of budget.
Right, if you were to go with the funding source table that's outlined there, what we're telling the Commonwealth first, because that's who we have to prove it to, is that we have a budget, Article 4 operating budget, that's balanced, based on the forecasts we have at the time. So that allows us to begin operations on July 1st. If anything happens, either specifically to any of these funding sources or to the overall economy, the town has the ability and should rely upon it to have a special meeting in the fall to then react to what may be potential shortages. Because you're not locking it in on May 5th to carry you all the way through June 30th, 2026.
Could I continue?
Absolutely.
Ed, if you were to decrease the 400 from the local receipts, so to Joe's point, 16,9, whatever. What is that total number, percentage of the 2024 number? And while you're doing that, if I can continue, Mr. Chair, Joe, can you remind me, the free cash that's in the sources of $500,000 is earmarked for?
That's simply earmarked for the contribution you choose to make to OPEB, which is one of those semi-fixed costs.
Gotcha. Thank you very much.
If I take 400,000 from the 17,414,000, I've got 17,014,500 divided by the actual number for 2024 of 18,533,062. That's basically 92% of what we collected for fiscal year 2024.
Okay. And as is, it's about 94%, if I recall, with the number that's in there, the 17,414. It's about 94%, if I recall.
I think so, yes, I don't have that.
Okay.
but-
All right.
No,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, just to reduce the hotel tax with what the school has presented and has been factored in here. The reduction of the school budget number would help reduce or bring the budget back into balance with a slight decrease in that local receipt for the meals tax. The overall school budget reduction for Monomoy was approximately $300,000 over what we had in the budget a week ago.
Right. However, at this point, we're only looking at Article 4, which doesn't include their budget.
Correct, I'm talking
Yeah,
about the whole
globally,
budget
correct.
globally.
Yep.
The total budgeted expenses is going to be coming down by 300,000.
Yeah.
We could reduce the local estimated receipts by 300,000, and that would bring us, it would be looking for about $100,000 to
Right.
find 100,000 somewhere else. I could work with Eric and the other departments to see if there might be an increase in one of the other line items that could potentially come up by that 100 to bring us back
Sure.
into balance.
Understood. I appreciate that thought process. I don't imagine that, and perhaps Mr. McCaskill, do you have any thoughts on the budget being presented in my terms only out of budget? Or do you have any thoughts on where the 450,000 might be able to come from within the proposed budget, Article 4 proposed budget?
Through you, Mr. Chair, Pete, thank you for that. I would say that I don't think we should go to town meeting and be out of balance. I mean, I think that's, I think we should go in balance. And to Ed's point, we just found, 300,000+ in the school. And I do have a couple other questions about budget items and also wanting to know what the balance of free cash that we're leaving in not spent for future free cash. So I would rather go in balanced, and certainly the board, we could pick a number in my opinion, we could pick a number underneath of what Ed and Eric have just shared on local receipts. But I think we should be close to it, and it's hard to believe that we're at this late in the game and we're still having this conversation about local receipts, and I was shocked that Eric did actually agree with me based on time on collection. So I apologize for bringing this forward so late in the game, but the conversation only happened last week. The short answer, Pete, is I'd rather go in balanced than not.
Understood. Appreciate that.
Joe?
We can't go forward without a balanced budget.
Right.
We have to demonstrate
Sure.
every step of the way that the budget is balanced.
So if I, to jump on Michael's point, so, and Ed's point, so in order to accomplish that tonight with a true understanding of numbers, the school overall reduction is about $309,000. We could apply that to the taxes column that the town administrator alluded to earlier to offset 309,000. So potentially, instead of reducing it by 450 tonight, meaning the local receipts, you reduce local receipts by 300,000 and add back to taxes 300,000. Does that thought process make any sense to either of you gentlemen? Because that's essentially where the money is coming from.
Putting it back as unspent.
And if I'm in left field, tell me. I dropped a many a ball out there.
So I'd be reducing the local receipts by the 309,000, increasing the taxes by the 309,000 to reduce the tax number in the Monomoy article. Is that what I'm hearing?
Essentially, if the Monomoy number is $300,000 less, then that's, would be essentially the funding source, and I assume that goes into taxes category on our sources.
Pull it back as an expense and put it back where it started from.
Mr. Chair.
Please, Joe?
So we don't articulate funding sources for any other articles in that same manner. So the Monomoy article, Article 5, the number that was adopted, that you went through tonight, we don't break out the sources and uses for that.
Correct, but in theory, that's where the money's coming from.
Correct.
Yeah.
So we, Administration and Finance, are relying upon a lot of sources and uses. And so you can do that for your table to do the balance exercise, but again, these are forecasts. Anything can happen on the floor of town meeting.
Understood.
We would still be able to balance our budget.
However, to walk in there with a number that
I
are
agree,
equal.
I agree. I was very excited that we had a number of estimated costs, then on the table, then on Appendix B, because that's what the moderator looks for as well.
And I want to caveat this by saying, this isn't us, willfully or gleefully spending the potential savings from the school department budget, because as you said, first of all, anything can happen on town meeting floor. More importantly, this is why we had the conversation with the school committee and the school administration, because we're not comfortable with where some of these projected sources are going, and therefore, we consider the overall budget to be extremely tight. So again, this isn't just, oh, great, they gave up 300, let's go spend it. It's because of the concern that we even had the conversation with the school board. So I just want to put that out there.
The 300,000 reduction in the school assessment, we can use that to reduce the estimated receipt, say on the hotel tax.
You can use it to offset, but where would that go, is what I'm saying, in the proposed sources chart?
For Appendix 4, Article 4 would reduce the local receipts, the 17 million by
300.
300, yes.
But in order to get it back to 48,127,931, where would we put that? What category would that 300 go into? Because if we don't, then we have to modify our draft budget.
What's not shown in the Monomoy article is the funding sources.
Agreed, and it doesn't need to
that's
be.
coming from taxes.
Right,
So
exactly.
there would be
It's coming from taxes, so we would put it into the taxes category
we'd
here.
increase the taxes in Article 4.
To
and
27,766,556.
add 300 there and take 300 out of the local receipt. I think that was,
So, before we continue down this path, I'd like to see where the rest of the board stands on this exercise, right?
Yep, 100%. I just wanted to.
No, and I hear you and completely appreciate where you're going with this. I'd also like to ask the board if they feel comfortable with town administrator's suggestion of leaving it the way it is, we have the $300,000 in savings, and then if we need to amend on a special, then we amend on a special, but, so,
Mr. Chair, if I could just.
yeah, please.
To add to that. So what we don't have yet are the motions that are gonna be made specifically for all these budgets. So right now, the forecast that we're working on is that table in Article 4. If anything outside of the Select Board, Administration, Finance, anything outside in the real world, so to speak, changes that, that would change the motion, and that's what we would change in the presentation on the floor of town meeting. So if you kept this alone for now, it doesn't mean that's it.
That's
on
right.
May 5th.
Well, that's kind of where I was going with that. And these are forecasts. Forecasts can't be wrong yet because they're forecasts.
Right.
So I'm,
Forecast won't be, I guarantee you it's not going to be right.
of course it won't.
It's a budget, and
Right.
things we're going to also be getting from the state in the next month or so is the House is going to be presenting their numbers for local aid to the town. We level funded using the numbers the actual number from this year. And then the Senate will be taking up their budget.
Right.
Generally, the two tend to slightly increase over what we've been carrying for the House number. So potentially see increases in state aid there.
So does the board, do you want to weigh in on this?
I'd like to.
I'd love you to.
Thanks. Can I ask a
Funny, you're the only one we
simple,
haven't heard from yet.
I'm just wondering if I could ask something, putting this in a simpler context. I think pretty clearly we've experienced a 100-year incident over the last 5 to 10 years. Curious, in FY '21, because I'm thinking that's the basement, that's COVID, everything started closing down. What were the local receipts then for that same period? Michael's right, I mean, July, August, and to a certain degree September, blow away the rest of the year, it's not linear.
So if I can rescue Ed, who was not here, but I was, you remember that town meeting was postponed 4 months. 4.5 months. So we were experiencing that time far greater local receipts than we anticipated. That was the budget that after free cash was established, was one of the higher levels of free cash. So when we went to that September 28th, Saturday morning town meeting on the football field, it was COVID impacted, but this resort community was seeing much stronger numbers on local receipts.
That's kind of why I'm asking this,
Sure.
because, I mean, if you're going to be worried about not hitting the number, you'd have to start anticipating what was analogous that you couldn't have planned on that really should have been a hit. And that's a bad year. I can't think of anything over the last 25 years that I could point to that would be more negative impact on local receipts. That's kind of why because you can't know what you don't know if you don't know it. I mean, the rest of this is a projection. I got that.
Making projections based on
I got it.
a full year, 6 months. and
I'm trying to put it within the context of a bad year. That's all I was trying to do.
And if I may, at the risk of creating a headline for certain media sites and all that.
How many are out there?
There are at least 2 that I can think of, but anyway. That's also why we've stockpiled very healthy reserves. That's why we have several different stabilization funds. That's why we have a general purpose stabilization fund that's close to $7 million. So I don't want anybody, we're going to mark the time at 8:25 PM on March 31st, 2025. I'm not suggesting we use those, but that's why they're there. And we use them at a special town meeting because something happened drastically to the forecasts.
And that's
Because the other
and that's
option
why I
we
was
could do,
asking.
the other option we could do, which is always an option, is cut.
But that's why I was asking.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
I'd like to make a motion.
Thank little baby Jesus.
I move,
Where did he come in?
I move that we approve the town operating budget as presented.
Except,
I'm not touching it, I'm leaving, it's a draft budget. Correct? I mean, we're having these conversations about moving monies, but we don't have to do that in this particular moment because it is a draft budget that we can amend.
Second. Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Yeah, I don't understand at all. I mean, it's either,
Then-
you're either accepting and adopting this number subject to a motion change, meaning, or,
I think I'm making the same motion that we've made in past years, where we have same conversations, where we talk about, this is what our budget is at the moment, to the exact points that everybody has brought up, all of them good. Anything could change. Something else could happen between now
but that's
and
as
town meeting.
expressed with placing Article 4, with an accept and adopt recommendation.
You have to make the motion to place. You didn't say that. Did you say to place?
I think we placed already, didn't we?
All the articles have been placed.
But
Oh, okay,
accepting and
then I
adopting
need to
has
check
not
that out.
happened,
So
has it?
accept and adopt. I don't think you said that.
I didn't say that.
You didn't.
I didn't, I said approve.
Yeah, let's try again with the accept and adopt.
I
I
moved-
remove my second.
And do you want me to get into the particulars of the
No,
300,000?
all I want is an accept and
Accept and
adopt.
adopt.
That's all you wanted?
Yeah.
Okay. I thought you wanted me to go into the
No.
details.
Oh, dear Lord, no.
Oh, no.
Okay, thank you. I move that we accept and adopt the town operating budget as presented.
Second. Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Michael, I'm going to ask because you're online. Anything from you?
No, just my previous statements stand, and I don't, when we're hearing a recommendation from our finance team that we're over projecting, I don't know why we wouldn't deal with it now rather than later, but I'll leave it at the vote. The only other comment I had about the budget was, and I don't want to be petty and pick on $25,000 to $75,000 when we have a 40 whatever million dollar budget and $145 million ask at town meeting. We've had no discussion, and it was brought up once before, about the finance committee's desire to go from $25,000 in the reserve fund, or $50,000, sorry, to $125,000 in 1 year, when they haven't, in at least 10 years, spent even the $50,000. So that's another part of the budget that I just don't support. And just because we have a balanced budget walking in here tonight, we are a bit late to the game, doesn't mean a whole lot to me, knowing that we're going to town meeting with the possibility of an adjustment because of inaccuracies, just to get something closed. But that's just my own feeling.
Any other discussion?
And I won't labor this point, I guess I appreciate Select Board Member McCaskill's concern on the local receipts, I share those concerns, and I don't know why we wouldn't, at this point when we can, move the 300,000 from one line to the other. I understand that it's all projection, but clearly I think what some people are seeing in the projection is that local receipts are probably overestimated at this point, and probably greater than the 300,000. So I don't know why we wouldn't take the opportunity to switch it at this point in time.
We could. What's the 300? It's not exactly 300. What's the number?
309, but
Give me the exact number, I'm happy to amend the motion. I had written down 300,000.
Joe?
You can vote the motion as presented and support 48 million, why did I put it away? $48,127,931. You can then take another vote and give direction on how you want the sources to be. And I would ask that you separate them, because if anyone on the board is objecting to the board's budget, it's the $48 million number, not the sources. So I'm going to go out on a limb and do something I very rarely do. I would urge you to adopt the motion as made, to accept and adopt your budget of $48,127,931.
That's my motion.
That's the motion, that's the second. Any other discussion? All in favor? Pete?
aye.
Don?
Aye.
Julie?
Aye.
Michael?
Opposed?
I'm an aye, 4-1.
Mr. Chair,
Please?
I'd like to make a motion to reduce the local receipt line item within the funding source for Article 4 by $309,000 and increase the taxes line within the funding sources of Article 4 by $309,000.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair?
Michael?
Only discussion is unrelated, but I guess fear of closing this out. Maybe the town administrator could explain it. The other question I had was on overlay surplus. Looks like last year was 400,000, this year is 200,000. Is that accurate or no?
That is accurate at this time as a vote of the Board of Assessors.
Michael, did you have
Is it?
was there a first question?
That was the question. Start with that. And has there been any further conversation with the Board of Assessors by administration to see if there is an additional 200,000 to alleviate some of the pressure on this budget?
Not at this time, because I didn't view it as pressure. That doesn't mean as we progress throughout the month of April to get the motions that we wouldn't do that. Certainly would.
I'll write that down, check into it again, Michael, for us.
Thank you.
Yep, any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, Pete?
Aye.
Don? Aye. Julie?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
I'm an aye. 5-0, Joe?
Can I ask if the board would reconsider the vote then on Article 4? You have the funding source change, you have your dollar amount. I'm concerned about the fact that this board doesn't support unanimously its own budget. It's a simple question to ask, and I'll yield, but it's an important question.
I see what you're saying. And it's printed this way.
Someone want to make a motion? to
It's the
reconsider?
board's budget.
Yeah.
I make a motion.
I move to rescind prior action.
Okay, second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion?
This is on
That's the moving the money.
the operating budget of 48,127,931.
That's correct, because there was one nay.
Understood, I just want to clarify.
Exactly. Yep. So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor to rescind. Pete?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
Julie?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
I'm an aye. 5-0. And then we'll need a motion.
The same. What-
Same motion that was put forward initially,
Which was mine.
which was Julie's, and who was the second? Was that Don?
It was you.
Was it me?
It was you.
So far,
I'd be willing to do it too.
So long ago, so many words ago. Okay, motion and a second. Any discussion on that?
I just want to clarify, Mr. Chair.
Please.
The motion is for Article 4 to have a total operating budget of 48,127,931.
That's correct,
Specifically to accept and adopt that.
to
number.
accept and adopt that number. All in favor, Pete?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
Julie?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
I'm an aye, 5-0.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I spoke incorrectly earlier. Article 9 has already been placed, accepted, and adopted. That one's all set.
That, Joe, can you remember? Was 9?
That's the Monomoy Middle School project.
Joe, I'm going to jump in there. I don't believe we accepted and adopted
I
it.
think,
I
yeah.
watched our
Apologize.
meeting, and there was no, it was 4 to 1.
And I misspoke about misspeaking.
Yes, twice. There was no accept and adopt. It was
We're
to
at that
place, and it
point.
was a 4 to 1 vote.
Okay, so we have a Scrivener's error right now.
Yes.
That shows an accept and adopt.
And that's
So,
in my
Mr.
notes.
Chairman, the next thing you want to do is go back to Article 9.
Like you said.
Smooth as glass.
Okay.
And just point of order, Mr. Chair,
Yes, please.
is Article 5 on your list as well?
Did I misunderstand your earlier vote tonight?
I thought
I was just
We
gonna
did that.
say.
Thought we had
yeah,
approved it.
We approved it,
We approved the
but the
Monomoy
one thing we
region.
didn't
And then
say
we
was
went back.
accept and adopt for now. That's,
No, we did because it was placed.
My notes say at 7:04 PM.
oh, did I say accept and adopt? I was just wondering if I made an
Kavanaugh
error.
moved, Howell seconded.
I did.
Accept and adopt,
Okay, I did say
What
accept,
time was
sorry.
that?
No, one person
7:04
did.
PM,
One-
March 31st, 2025.
Blacked out?
I did it tonight when they were
Where's the
here.
vote?
I just want one person.
My notes
here.
say it was accept and adopt Article 5 as presented, 5-0 vote.
Really?
Yeah.
Look at me, I used the right words. I thought I maybe messed that one up, so.
All right, I was clearly sound asleep.
Somebody else has the same bingo card in the
what I
audience,
said
so.
when she
No,
said
I
it.
know I made the motion, I'm just saying I wasn't.
Okay, moving on to Article 9. We have placed,
Yes.
but we need to accept and adopt. And I will move that we indefinitely postpone Article 9 as presented.
Where are we here?
I'll second that for discussion.
Thank you, Michael. Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
If you give me 1 second, Mr.
Sure,
Chair. if you could.
absolutely.
related to the middle school siding project.
That's right. And my rationale is I'd like to see what happens April 8th.
No, and I agree, which is why, and I don't have the language in front of me, but essentially, the motion oh, shit, Don, you can help me.
Indefinitely postponed.
No, but if we want to gather additional information before we cast our vote, and I know it wouldn't be printed.
Well, that's what FinCom does, like in postpone with the need for more information, something like that.
Joe, maybe you can bail me out. Is there any language for that, or?
It would be indefinite postponement.
That's what it would be then?
Correct.
And just waiting for additional information?
Correct, but then what would happen is if that's the primary motion that exists, the moderator always asks, is there a positive motion, and someone would move to adopt.
All right.
So I would recommend indefinite postponement,
All right.
because I will just
Supplant.
take my shot right now.
Gotcha, no.
The language used by the Finance Committee, as I understand it, the NPRFI, or whatever that thing is called, is because they have a requirement under the charter to give all recommendations. So their recommendation is to not recommend something.
Perfect, all
The
right.
folks are working on language that creates motions.
Gotcha, thank you.
Moved and seconded. Any other discussion? Michael? Yeah, please.
You know, I do find it funny that that there was a committee assembled to do a study on the middle school and the window replacement and mold and everything else. Yet nobody from that committee, even the representatives from the town of Harwich, have been before this body to explain the findings. Am I to do what I was told to do on the 2 positions we funded 2 years ago, that they were supposed to get back to us on how they were working and go watch a YouTube video? Or are we going to request that they actually come before the executive body, i.e. the town, and the taxpayers, another platform for them to understand what's going on and explain this project?
Thank you, Michael. Any other discussion?
I think Ed was here last week, but he didn't talk.
He didn't speak. Okay, all in favor. Pete?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
Julie?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. 5-0, Joe.
Thank you.
And that was Article
Just-
9.
Our other representative was here as well. Craig Gabri was in the audience. And
No
Ed
one has
McManus.
spoken to it, though.
No, but I'm just saying.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Michael?
other than a statement, that was a request.
Understood. So, Joe, what number are we on here? Are we on 54?
That's my understanding.
And is that the last one, Joe?
That's my understanding.
Thank you.
For nostalgia purposes.
I move that we.
No, hold on.
I want to approve it.
Okay.
Accept and adopt, you mean? Please.
Joe, would you please just go over once again for us the new state statute
Certainly.
with respect to Article 54 and revolving funds?
Thank you. So Article 54 reads as the annual departmental revolving funds authorizations. What that gets to is technically spending limit authorization. So it's the cap that is placed on the various revolving funds that the town has. So this article was drafted and prepared prior to January 25th, 2025, when Governor Healy signed the Municipal Empowerment Act, which is now law. One of the many parts of that Municipal Empowerment Act indicated that if the spending limits are not changed, you don't have to vote them every year. So Article 54, as presented by administration, is not recommending any changes.
Understood.
So unless the board wants to make changes, I don't think it's an opinion, I believe it's a fair statement to say, it's not necessary to go before a town meeting, because there are no changes.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, we could rescind our motion, our vote to place.
Or you could vote to withdraw.
Or we could vote to withdraw. Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Or any
Michael?
other action.
I feel like we're skipping a step. I haven't at least heard only grumblings of, but part of the reason why we didn't do anything last week on this article was because there was still question about whether or not we could adjust one of the revolving funds. It's my understanding that It is not the recommendation of the town administrator or the finance team to do so at this time, yet just to commit to work on that for the next budget cycle with the, before we get to this point. Can you just explain, and I'm asking through the chair to the town administrator, why it's not a good idea to adjust that revolving fund at this time?
So I believe we're mixing up two different articles. There is Article 53, which would amend Chapter 8 by deleting one of the funds. And if I may...
I'm 54. Just to alleviate confusion, Joe, I'm speaking of 54, specific to the request to adjust the revolving fund at 204 Sisson Road. Not my suggestion, by the way.
No, I understand. If I could continue, there was a motions discussion with various parties that involved administration, finance, finance committee, everyone that usually does the motions meeting. And the discussion centered on amending Chapter 8 to change language. So the language change article is Article 53. Right now, the only thing you're changing is to delete the golf, sorry, and I'm noticing a typo. It says enterprise. It's the receipts reserved and infrastructure. The discussion that I was aware of several weeks ago from the board is if you wanted to modify the elements of that revolving fund for 204 Sisson Road, separate and distinct from the funding authorization. The discussion I was aware of is, did you want to change anything in Chapter 8 of the general bylaws that would change the revenue sources or the uses sources as it related to a request from Finance Committee to then put some of those into the operating budget? That was the thing that, if I may, Administration and Finance, not trying to speak in the third person, but specifically, Ed, Eric, and I have concerns about mechanically. Council raised a number of concerns, and then one of the best concerns that was raised is, if you're trying not to do any harm to those programs, there's a gap, a timing gap, between when town meeting votes something to when it goes into effect July 1st. Because you're changing the bylaw, you have to wait for the Attorney General to approve that. And it's not necessarily retroactive in the sense that we're not collecting those funds at that time. So that's why I'm saying for this evening, if you want to change any elements of a revolving fund, I recommend you rely upon present Article 53. Article 54, if you're not changing any of the elements, the question before you is what funding, what spending limits do you want to have for fiscal year 2026?
So, and just so I can make this clear, you're saying that if we don't change the spending limit,
Article 54 is unnecessary under the new law.
54 can go away.
Correct.
So okay, go ahead, Don, sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. But just follow me here. Using that logic, we are never going to be able to change this, ever, because it'll always wind up bumping up against the Attorney General's approval, every year.
No, if I may.
Yeah.
Spending limits do not go to the
I don't
Attorney
mean
General.
that. I mean, if we wanted to do that which we were discussing, change the funding over to regular general funds, every year we're going to bump up against that gap.
I would disagree with that respectfully. What we, administration and finance, didn't have the benefit of was time.
Okay.
This request was raised a year ago by the Finance Committee. The board heard that, and the board did whatever the board decided to do, as is your right. The question was brought up again on February 3rd, 2025. The town didn't take any action. The concern right now is if legal, administration, and finance miss something or are inarticulate on the language changes, that's what would mess it up for this year. Because I want to make it very clear, I do not need revolving funds per se. I recognize their value as a financial management tool under Chapter 44, Section 53E and a half. But you see that we don't rely upon that for our operating budget, so it's an either or. So for me, in this instance, in real time for the 2025 annual town meeting, if you want to do it, you should do it under 53, not under 54, but if you want to do it, there are concerns. And council agreed with those concerns, and I think all parties in the room understood the concerns during the motions discussion.
And if I could just add to that, for me at least, I'm not interested in creating havoc with any of our revolving fund departments. But on the other hand, I am committed, and I know the members of the board who are moving forward, we're committed to beginning the process of figuring this out sooner rather than later, so that by the time next annual town meeting comes along, we're in a much better position after reviewing all the revolving funds to make an educated decision and not hamstring any of our departments with an error or something that we missed. So that's my position on that. So I would,
So do you need a motion?
Mr. Chair?
yeah, Michael?
Yeah, just to a previous comment by the town administrator, and really looking for guidance on a motion, why wouldn't we, since we've already voted to place Article 54, why wouldn't we have to vote to rescind? And you mentioned withdraw instead of rescind. Could you explain?
Parliamentary, it has the same effect. A vote of rescission has a number of rules that we, quite frankly, haven't looked into. You're taking the act tonight of finalizing your warrant. So you could place more if you wanted to. Logically, I'm arguing that you could withdraw and renumber if you wanted to. However the board wants to do it is how the board can do it.
Mr. Chair?
Please.
I move that we withdraw Article 54 from the annual town meeting warrant, 2025.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Pete?
And I guess I'm looking at the clock. I want to go watch a basketball game.
Man, brother.
But can you give me a 2-minute or less 30,000-foot view of what we need to do then to change this in the future?
Change spending limits?
No, I understand spending limits, and
Because that's all this article gets.
I understand that, but the conversation went globally to, and I'm not, the conversation's on 204 right now, but I'm not just there.
Sure.
So how do we change any of those if we want to then incorporate them in the budget in future years?
So the simple answer would be, you could rely upon your budget directive. So that exercise you do in September or October. However, I would suggest right after town meeting, you can also give that guidance. I know the department heads that remain will bear testimony to, 2 years ago, I think we started the budget prep the day after the second day of town meeting. So we can begin that immediately to make sure all of those items are captured, that we have proper language in the revolving funds should they remain, that we have proper mechanics in place to make sure we don't miss anything in between. And then last but not least, there may be value in doing this at a special in the fall. I throw that out there as an answer. So it can begin immediately. There's no prohibition whatsoever.
And Mr. Chair, that, you know, the motion's to rescind the article. I'm probably going to vote against it only because I like the townspeople to see what's out there. And I understand what the law states, and I appreciate that as well. All that said, I really want us working on this thing because there's more than the 204 that needs to be addressed. And we need to come up with the exact mechanism to get these things that belong into the budget, and then any particular spending limits that either need to be reduced or increased, set at appropriate levels. I'm going to say I'm disappointed that we can't accomplish it, but I understand, you know, the back end to it. But the last thing I'll say, because I really want to see this game, I wasn't looking to eliminate this particular category in its entirety. I was looking to reduce the overall spending limit. And by reducing that spending limit, it was because items were not going to be paid out of that account. They were going to be paid out of our operating budget. So it wasn't looking to eliminate this line and do away with it. I was looking for a multi-step process to get us where we needed to go. But again, 8:51, tip-off is in 9 minutes. I'm good.
I have a lot to say about that, Pete, and just buckle. Done?
Yep. Just quickly, in a true irony, I'm going to vote against it also because I would want it to be there to vote against it. It really needs to be seen by the public. They need to know what's going on and be reminded each year. And my argument would be, that would be the argument for putting it in the budget next year when they see how much money is going out this way. And if no news is not good news in that respect.
Anyone else? Joe? Sorry.
And To try to put it out there, I'm not trying to advocate for any one thing, but for the many conversations we've had about revolving funds over the years, we now understand that we have to give a report on the status of revolving funds at town meeting. So that could be done ahead of Article 53, which is looking to change one of the items. So it isn't that the information wouldn't be available if Article 54 doesn't exist in this warrant, or future warrants. There's any number of ways we can transmit that information. As I understand it, your motion and your action right now is relative to 54.
Correct.
Right.
Rescinding the placement.
Pull it out.
That's right.
Withdraw, actually.
8 minutes.
We have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? All in favor? Pete?
No.
Don?
No.
Julie?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
I'm an aye, 3-2.
Thank you.
What else? Is that it?
Moving along. Ed, do we need to keep Ed here, Joe, in your opinion?
Not at all.
Or could Pete go?
He's gonna be able to
instead
listen
of
to it on the radio for his
Ed may want to
hour
stay.
and 48-minute ride home.
He may want to.
Rattling his papers over there. Take a look
However,
at me.
one of the number one reasons that we had asked Mr. Spellman to be here is that, and again, I missed your meeting last week. I think you understand the work that I was doing last week, so to speak. There's been commentary, there's been a lot of commentary, and I know some of it's public comment, but also comments that have been made by elected and appointed officials about where the town's at with the levy limit. Now, at the risk of reopening Article 4, which you have adopted, are there any questions about where we are with the levy limit? If not, I think that was the only other reason why Mr. Spellman was here, beyond what you've already done on Articles 4 and 5.
Anyone on the board?
Yeah, what I was hearing, and it wasn't me saying it, was that we were close to bumping up against the levy limit. So I'll just put it out there.
In Harwich, we are close to the levy limit. A lot of cities and towns in the Commonwealth are also. There are certain exceptions where their communities are significantly below it. In the case of Harwich, I think we're within about $100,000. The other comparison, when I looked at the town of Chatham, they were just under $3 million. It's a decision and it's a choice. Basically, the levy limit is something that is a function of Prop 2.5. It established a base, and it said that base can go up by a factor of 2.5%, and it's for the total levy. It's not for individual properties. So that you have that statutory increase, they allow an increase for new growth, and that becomes your next year, your ending year base of last year becomes the beginning for this year, for the next fiscal year. The only other exception to it is if you pass an operating override, that adds to the base in that current year, and that flows through and increases the base, beginning base for the next year. So that is kind of the function of just the process of the levy limit itself. The Department of Revenue calculates it for each community, and it's factored into the calculation of setting the individual towns' tax rates. They make sure you're within that levy limit, and for Harwich, there are basically two exceptions that add to it. The previously authorized debt exclusions for capital projects that you've authorized, that gets added to above the levy limit. And then there's also a Cape Cod,
Cape Cod Commission obligation?
Cape Cod Commission assessment. That amount in statute is on top of the tax levy limit also. I could get you something just to show you the calculations from the DOR for the annual, and could get you some information on the levy itself too.
If I could just briefly follow on that, what I've always understood it to be, and I've sought validation on this today from Ed, is, as it was said, how close you get to the levy limit is a policy decision of the select board. And you go through that when you are doing your tax recap and all that as well in the fall, correct? So that it's a directive that's based on a preference. And same kind of concept, if you want to get away from that, because going to your levy limit is allowed. It's a financial management tool. Doing less than your levy limit is a preference. So if you want to talk about these things, same thing, right after May. These are critical things to talk about. They are the things that still make me happy as an administrator because they're the mechanics of what we do. But I wouldn't want anyone, because I've heard it said at other school meetings and things like that that I've been at, that, well, Harwich is dangerously close to the levy limit. I think the word I would have used is Harwich is legally close to its levy limit. You know, the danger comes in the things that you've never directed us to do when we don't, general overrides.
Pete?
I would only comment that, both Ed and Joe spot on, it comes down to the board on how we want to operate and how we want to spend money. And my comfort level of being over 99% of the levy limit isn't great. I don't like being that close. I would like to see this board, as we move into the new fiscal year, set some of those expectations and ground rules that, perhaps we don't want to belly up against that every year, because when the unknown happens is when you really get into trouble, right? So, and it's always about the unknown. If we could predict it, then great, but it's unknown. And so when you're that close, and to Michael's point earlier about receipts, that's one of the things we control more than anything else. And if you're gonna try to max that out every year, you really get into some trouble when the stuff hits the fan. So I won't swear anymore because we probably already have some FCC violations.
Don't worry.
They're gonna come out of Don's salary, so feel free to debit his account.
If I could just make a very brief, quick comment, just talk about reserves, your free cash and the general stabilization fund. Those are your rainy day fund.
Yep.
Those are,
100%
at
agree,
home,
Ed.
your boiler breaks, you need to replace it, that's where you go. The rating
100%.
agencies look at that, it's a positive thing that you have those accounts. They add them together in conjunction with the general fund to come up with reserves, and they see that as a positive thing for the community. One of the factors that keeps you with your AAA bond rating.
Absolutely, and I appreciate those comments as well, and probably if I didn't live through 2005, I'd be more comfortable being at 99% of the levy limit and spending all of our, anticipated receipts, but having lived that and seeing the implication on town staff, it wasn't a pretty day, so, but I appreciate your comments, and I agree. I'm glad we're there with those
That you
accounts,
have it.
so that they will get us out of some short-term trouble. So thank you for that.
All set? Oh, Don?
Oh,
Yeah, please. Ed, I think
And with that, I'd like to make a motion to vote to close the warrant with the addition of Article 37 and any Scribner corrections that need to be made that are discovered after this vote.
Second.
moved and seconded. Any discussion? The only thing, Joe, that I would like to see change, and I'm just going to say it now so I don't forget, is Article 20. I would like to add the language pond water. So it says water quality, it should say pond water quality. I've been, you see that? Sorry. We can do this
It's
tomorrow.
not Great Sand Lakes.
Yeah, no,
Is it article
it is Great
related,
Sand
or
Lakes,
is it
Great Sand
explanation?
Lakes, Great Sand Lakes.
Ours.
yeah. What?
Our
Ours.
article.
Our Article 20,
Okay.
yes. This is just so I don't forget.
Paper is so much easier.
You're not kidding. Well,
Where was the reference, though, Mr.
it's in the
Chairman?
explanation.
Okay.
You'll see where it says pond water quality, and then I just don't want Pete to see tip-off.
So, I agree that that was a purposeful act. That is from the town CWMP. That is why the town wants to do freshwater ponds, because it's ponds resulting in degraded water quality of the ponds. I have no problem striking it, but it does not in any way, shape, or form tie to drinking water quality. It's pond water quality.
And I think for clarity, where it says systems into the freshwater ponds resulting in degraded pond water quality,
Sure.
that would make me and a lot of other people happy.
Yep.
Okay, so.
But if I may, I would
Yes.
argue that that's not a Scrivener's error. That's an important thing to be, everyone to be aware of.
Yes.
So if the board agrees with that.
Does the board agree?
It's not worth rescinding, so yes. He won't get there for a second half.
I think we're good. So we have motion and a second. Any more discussion? Hearing none, all in
Just
favor?
that,
Sorry, Michael?
Just to let Pete know I got the game on, so I'll keep track of it for him.
Great.
Thank you, Michael.
Okay,
I appreciate periodic interruptions with score updates.
Still trying to get a vote. Moved and seconded. All in favor, Pete?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
Julie?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
I'm an aye, 5-0, Joe.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Ed. Safe travels.
Ed, thank you so much.
Thanks, Ed.
Thank you, Ed.
There are 10 versions of the signature
You
page
text
coming
him on
around.
your
We'd ask
way
you to
if you
sign
get a
all
score.
10.
Okay, moving on to annual town election. Item A, accept the 2025 annual town election warrant.
So moved.
Need a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, Pete?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
Julie?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
And I'm an aye, 5-0.
Who was the second on that one, please?
Me.
That was Julie.
And you have 5 originals of that coming around?
And item B, vote to close the 2025 annual town election warrant.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, Pete?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
Julie?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. New business.
Thank you.
Fee waiver request from the Harwich Garden Club for plant sale on May 24th, 2025 at Doan Park.
I move that we approve the fee waiver request from the Harwich Garden Club for plant sale on May.
Second.
Moved and seconded, Don wants to discuss.
Yep, no, not discussed, just briefly, that same as last year, there is really no cost to the town at all, and yet the garden club, when they raise this money, goes out and does plantings and waterings, including the amazing watering of plants around Brooks Academy when the water was turned off. They had to schlep it around in buckets, so
Do a wonderful job.
sweat equity alone.
And I think the whole board, thank you to the garden club. So moved and seconded, any discussion, all in favor, Pete?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
Julie?
Aye.
Michael?
I'm an aye, and just to echo Don's comments, Garden Club is one that I supported last year, one of one, I think. But they do a wonderful job around town with all of the plants.
Thank you, Michael. That's 5-0, Joe, I'm an aye.
Thank you.
Can I get a motion on item B, new business?
Chair.
Yes, please.
I make a motion to approve the following 2025 seasonal on-premise liquor license renewals. Pellamon Earl Operating LLC, DBA Pellamon Earl, 30 Earl Road. Number 2, Port Restaurant and Bar, Inc., 541 Route 28. Number 3, Ember Pizza, Inc., DBA Ember, 600 Route 28. Number 4, Saquotucket Snack Shack, LLC, DBA Dockside, 715 Route 28, Unit A. Number 5, Witchmere Harbor Functions, LP, DBA Witchmere Harbor Beach and Tennis Club, 23 Snow Road Inn. And number 6, The Lucky Labrador, Inc., DBA Perks, 545 Route 28.
Second, but let me clarify, that also includes any previous language that was contained.
Add it to the
on those.
motion.
Moved and seconded with previous restrictions. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor. Pete?
Aye.
Don? Julie?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
And I'm an aye, 5-0, Joe.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the following 2025 seasonal inn holder license renewal. Allen Harbor Inn, 326 Lower County Road.
Second.
Moved and seconded, any discussion? Hearing none, Michael?
Aye.
Julie?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
Pete?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. Item D.
Chair, I move to approve the following 2025 common victual license renewals. Number 1, Witchmere Harbor Function LP, DBA Witchmere Harbor Club, 23 Snow Inn Road. Number 2, Belmont Condominium Trust, DBA The Beach, 1 Belmont Road. Number 3, Saquotucket Snack Shack, DBA Dockside Cafe, Harwich Port, 715A, Route 28. Number 4, MT Group, DBA Mad Minnow Bar and Kitchen, 554 Route 28. Number 5, 554 Street Bar, DBA Three Monkeys, 554 Route 28.
Second.
Done, Pete, moved and seconded, any discussion?
Yeah, I like the way you pronounce Fittler.
Pete? All in favor, Pete?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
Julie?
Aye.
Michael?
I'm an aye.
And I'm an aye. 5-0, Joe?
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the following 2025 seasonal entertainment license renewals. Number 1, Witchmere Harbor Functions, DBA Witchmere Beach Club, 23 Snow Inn Road. Weekday, 11A to 1A inside, 11A to 10P outside. Dancing by patrons, dancing by live performers, live recorded music, DJ or band amplification system. Sunday, 11A to 1A, inside, 11A to 10P, outside, dancing by patrons, dancing by live performers, live recorded music, DJ band, amplification systems, and pre-existing conditions.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? I'm just checking one thing here. Bear with me. Hearing no discussion, all in favor. Pete?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
Julie?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
I'm an aye. 5-0, Joe?
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the Belmont Condominium Trust DBA The Beach, 1 Belmont Road, weekday, 7P to 10:30P, inside, dancing by patrons, dancing by live performers, live recorded music.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor. Pete?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
Julie?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
I'm an aye. 5-0, Joe?
Thank you.
And on to old business. Discussion on wastewater management consultant.
Mr. Chairman, very quickly, if I could.
Please.
Just want to advise the board, I'm also sending around items that were voted on the March 24th meeting that were approved by the board that just need board signatures. So the last packet coming to you, you've already voted, we just need you to sign them.
Thank you. So I'll lead on this one. I sent over, just in the interest of efficiency here, I sent over a revised wastewater management consultant contract for you to all look at. Attorney Giorgio added one. Really, I removed all the fees, mileage, food, all that kind of extra stuff. And then Attorney Giorgio added one piece of language to the scope, which basically states, and I'll find it if we need to. Essentially stating that in the scope of this agreement, the contractor will provide no engineering or design services. That is the only addition, other than the deletions that I took out. That's the only addition to the contract. So I hope you all had a chance to read it. And I'll open it up to the board for any questions. If not, we can make a motion.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we enter an agreement for wastewater project consultant between the town of Harwich and Waterworks Consulting LLC.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Is there outer amount?
I'm trying to find it.
There is a dollar amount.
I have that one.
Is it not to exceed?
Not to exceed 50,000.
Not to exceed 50,000, Article 3 compensation.
Part of the motion.
Out of my second.
Part of the motion, part of the second. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All in favor. Pete?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
Julie?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
I'm an aye. 5-0, Joe. Update on next steps on finance director search. So I put
Mr.
this.
Chairman, if I could.
Oh, sure, please,
Just
sorry.
before you get into that, I apologize, but it's also some sad news. As you are aware, Karen Shanley, our search consultant, has been working with Angelique McGibbon, and I just wanted to put out there that she was doing this at a time of great stress and duress. Her husband, Mike, passed away unexpectedly. He was hospitalized for several weeks, and I just wanted to put out not only the condolences of the town, but Karen conducted some of the interviews unknown to anybody from a remote. We knew she was remote, but people didn't know because of her professionalism in class is that it was while her husband was being cared for. And so I just did want to put out there that we recognize the Shanleys and their tremendous loss. Mike was a great guy. And, as you take the next steps, I think it's important to just put out there to the Shanley family our deepest condolences on their terrible loss and just the utmost gratitude for the work that Karen did to get us all to this point. Thank you.
Thank you for saying that, Joe. What a absolutely strong individual she is, and our prayers and thoughts go to her and her whole entire family.
Thank you.
Okay, well, the reason I put this on is, Pete, I want to say thank you for your questions. They have been forwarded to Karen, who replied on Sunday and said she received them. And I think what we need to do now is pick a date. Consider some dates for interviews. Please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to get one thing straight, though, because it just is confusing the heck out of me. Whatever questions we wind up with, finally, there are questions. The consultants has done their job. I mean, so from here on in, it's us. Just to make that really clear.
Thank you for that.
We don't need her approval for anything at this point.
Nor would I suggest that she's looking for that. I believe it's,
Okay, she can
I
see
certainly
it,
recognize
but
that
there
the
are
consultant
questions.
has gotten you to the critical next steps for you all to take up.
And Joe, if I'm not mistaken, us picking a date would probably be the next
Sure.
logical step,
Yeah.
so.
And I
I'm really
would,
not excited for this exercise right now to try to pick a date for 5.
well, my guess is we're not getting that done in the next few minutes.
No,
so,
but begin to think about.
Yeah, so, but I would also, Mr. Chair, what I was going to say is, I agree we need to pick a date. I'd like to see the date sooner than later. What I can share with you tonight and with the rest of the board is that April 21, I will not be available, which is a Monday evening. I do think we could get this accomplished on a Monday evening, but if the board wishes to do it on a separate night, we could try to figure that out as far as dates. My last piece is when it comes to the questions, and I have no problem that you sent them off to Ms. Shanley, and of course our condolences to her and her entire family. It's the last thing she needs to worry about right now, and I think we need to have a meeting to discuss our questions prior to the interviews.
And just to say, the 21st is the holiday, so it's the 22nd.
And I wouldn't be here that.
Yeah, no, I just
Yes,
meant
thank you
it.
for that.
How many applicants are there?
6, I believe, 6 applicants. So you may need to do it over 2 nights.
I think so. And to discuss our questions publicly probably wouldn't be the best choice, given the fact that the applicants would be able to hear the questions.
Understood. I
So-
don't know that that's the worst thing, but, you know, that's up
Something
to
to
the
talk
board.
about.
Yeah, agreed.
Something to talk about.
Agreed.
So, I don't know how best to accomplish this, but if everybody wants to send me
Yep.
their dates, and I agree, this is the last thing Karen needs to be worrying about, but at least we can have our positions
Yep.
ready when it's time, so. Don?
Yeah, counterpoint. With 6 people, let's say, slog along between 20 and 30 minutes in an interview, we're still talking about an entire night with nothing but that. So,
And I appreciate that point, I agree. And I think it's probably going to be over 30 minutes.
I do too. That's why I brought it up, because I know that we're getting used to 5 hours. But I'm not sure I want to do that.
Wait and see what happens next Monday. You don't even know you were here.
And just to my point, that's why I'd like to see it on a Monday night, because the last thing I want is a 5-hour Monday night, then followed by a 6-hour Tuesday or Wednesday night.
Do we get overtime?
Yes, you do. It's going to pay the fines that I incurred, so.
So we'll leave it as you all will send me dates. First one to send me a date wins a prize, 'cause, and then, lastly, we have
Mr. Chair,
Michael. Yes.
can you ask that the questions that the search firm came up with, along with a draft of other questions that were proposed by board members, be sent to each of us to digest?
Will do.
Prior to anything?
Absolutely. Town administrator report.
So, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I have 3 personnel announcements to make and 3 contracts. The first is something I've been practicing for several days. It's to announce the promotion of Marissa L. Saharaway. It sounds good, but I still don't think I got it right. Marissa, as you know, is in our clerk's office. She is the candidate follow Sue Pires as the assistant to the fire chief, and so we congratulate her on her promotion. Proud to announce the hiring of Elizabeth Shaw. She is our new executive assistant to the building commissioner and to building and conservation. And Ms. Shaw is set to start with us, give me a moment, on no earlier than Monday, April 14th. And the last one is the appointment of Terry Gorino to be the senior health agent. Terry is going to be joining us no earlier than that Tuesday following the holiday. I'm getting the dates wrong. Is it the 21st? 22nd, all right. Thank you. And then further, 3 contracts. The first was for a range ball dispenser. Easy Picker Golf Products Incorporated was acquired through the 30B procurement. This is for a purchase of a range ball dispenser with the wireless pin system for Cranberry Valley. It was in the amount of $12,701.75, and this is going to be funded through the golf department's operating budget. Next one is a change order contract that relates to the historic property inventory. The vendor that's been working with the Historic District Historical Commission and relevant staff was Marquee Architecture LLC. Their effective date of the agreement ran out. The parties agreed to extend through August 15, 2025. However, there's no change whatsoever in the cost or the contract. And then last is a contract for the package grinder pumps. Working with Mark Drainville at GHD, Jason Trepania for the Water Wastewater Department, and Megan Eldridge. The town did a bid, and F.R. Mahoney and Associates has been identified as the most responsible bidder. And this is a contract in the amount of $69,334 for the purchase, delivery, and startup of package grinder pumps related to sewer installation in Phase 2 of the Comprehensive Wastewater Management Plan. As you know, the funding for this article, for this purchase, comes from the Article 14 of the 2018 Annual Town Meeting. The policy was approved by you folks in November of 2024. We did the bidding in January. Bids were due in February and were opened in March. So that's the next big step. What we're waiting on for the distribution of those and the reimbursements for is for council to confirm the waiver of liability. So if you get a grinder pump, you say that you understand all the terms and conditions, as well as a sign of release for anyone receiving reimbursement that already purchased a grinder pump. And that concludes my report, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chair, thank you. What does that average out to per pump?
I believe
put
it
out
was
there.
just under $6,400.
Okay, that's it.
Select Board, Pete, anything?
I'll start on page 3 and work backwards. No, but with that comment, I didn't have anything, but, I like to come up with things. With that said, so the church is still waiting at this point?
Correct, so
Okay.
we're just waiting
Once
to
this
get the
is
legal
done.
forms. Yep.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
Don?
Loose ends also. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Off of last meeting, I was under the understanding that we were going to entertain the notion of having Andrew Gottlieb come in to just talk with us. I did, in fact, call him. He is more ready, willing, and able and eager to talk to all of us, so anybody can ask any questions, because only you and I got to talk to him. So if you could schedule that.
Yeah, I'll speak with you tomorrow or the
Okay,
next day. and we'll
terrific. Thank you.
get it on
That's it.
something. Julie?
I don't have anything.
Michael?
Just that I'd like to, or you to consider having Cape Cod Commission, our representative, come before. Jacqueline was on the subcommittee for Cape Cod Commission for its lack of support or non-support for the Witchmere Harbor expansion. And given what that means to the town, I think it would be appropriate to get our representative's thoughts, and as well as the rest of the findings of the committee to not push that project forward.
Okay, thank you, and I have nothing.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor? Pete?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
Julie?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
And I'm an aye.